Let's get ready to RPG!
RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG!
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Knights of the Last Call. In an unexpected and surprise turn of events, I'm back on. And hello again. Yeah, so, well, obviously, my time schedule is completely messed up. But my goal was to get to Twitch affiliate status this month. And I was looking at something, and it made me feel like I only had to April to complete the time frame. And so I wanted to make sure I had a stream on April 30th. I don't know exactly how it works. So rather than risk, I don't know, having to wait another month to potentially try to get affiliate status, I decided to just hop on the stream again, hang out with folks late night. People have been showing up on the late night streams, and you know, we did a first look earlier. Well, I should say yesterday, but we did a first look earlier tonight. So we didn't really have a chance to really kind of like, I didn't really get to talk with the chat. I didn't really get to talk to people because that's the only problem with the first look streams is they're fairly focused, on the subject material. So there's not as much time to interact with the chat, which is awesome. So hello, GM Scott. Hello. Hello, Lollipop. Oh, GM Scott, you can definitely go to bed on this one. This is just this is more of just a late night hangout topic. Really, no. When the topic is late night, it just means there really is no topic. Which part, Donnie? The stream or what we're doing again, or what do you want? What are you trying to figure out? Well, that's unfortunately Pheasants, but that's okay. It's cool that you got to stop by. Appreciate you stopping by. Appreciate the support on Twitch. That's awesome. Thank you. What's up, LP? No, again, I mean, ultraviolet taste. It wasn't bad, I mean, I liked it better than Chubo's. I mean, I didn't have the sort of heart attack I had with Ryutama. So, all that stuff. Oh, sweet. Yeah, I'm going to go see that Friday morning. My buddies and I, we get together for the Marvel releases. We go get breakfast, and then we go see the movie at like 10 a.m. like old people or whatever, like 9:30 or like old people. With the Marvel movies, we do that with the Marvel movies, and we've been doing it for like 15 years now. So it's just one of those things that we do. I actually have kind of high hopes for it, although I am a little worried. Well, I won't get into spoilers, but clearly one of the characters is supposed to be Sentry, and Sentry's kind of like a Superman. And I think the Thunderbolts are cool in theory because it's a bunch of low-powered superheroes, in theory doing low-powered stuff. And Sentry kind of throws off that vibe, so. But, yeah. So that's the only thing I'm a little worried about. Plus, rather ironically, the actor that they have playing Sentry is named Bob in the film, and it's the same actor who played Bob in the new Top Gun movie. And so the fact that he's still named Bob to me is very funny. So it's very hard for me not to very hard for me not to think of the kind of dorky the character from Top Gun. What is it? Top Gun 2 Maverick, which was a great movie, by the way. Fantastic movie. I actually didn't see that movie in theaters or anything. The first time I saw that movie, because I don't really go see movies anymore unless it's a Marvel movie, and that's just because it's my thing my friends and I do. I saw that movie on a cruise ship. But it was a beautiful night up on the big screen there on the deck, and I saw it, and I watched it with my mom. She's with me. And obviously she's seen the original Top Gun like me, many times. And, it had new moments, new characters, old moments, old callbacks. I thought it was like kind of a perfect movie in a weird sense. And it just delivered very, very well. The fight scenes, I should say the flying scenes were just really, really good. It was, I thought, And I'm not like an aviator. I'm not like an ninja guy. It was just, yeah, it was a perfect amount of old and new, of being respectful to what had come before it, while, really, in some ways making it was about Maverick and it wasn't about Maverick. It was actually, again, I thought it was a fantastic movie. And I really didn't see too many plot holes with it, at least none that I could like easily pick apart. I'm sure if I knew more about how these fighter jets actually worked, I would probably be able to pick it apart, but I don't. So, well, I don't go as much as I used to, but that's just because more and more I find that the movies just don't interest me. They aren't making the kind of movies that I want to go see. And there's so many remakes these days that it's very unappealing for me. I like that this community trauma bonds over exploring painful TTRPGs. We were all there that night with Ryutama. We were all there. I remember it. You went through it. I went through it. We could be together. Yeah, I mean, it's not to say that all movies suck or anything like that, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, more and more, they can't all be Earth Dawn. No, they can't. No, they can't. Oh, GM Scott, let me be very clear about something here. There was a time in my life where I would probably consider myself a cinephile. I went to the movies probably once a week, sometimes twice a week. I saw a lot of movies, and certainly and that's on the screen. I watch them at home too. And at the time, this was years ago, my girlfriend and I, we would go to film festivals, so I watched a wide variety of movies. And I liked movies, but the real reason I went to the cinema was the popcorn. So, in fact, I haven't done it in my life, but now that I don't watch movies as really at all, very often, maybe a couple times a year, because that's when a new Marvel movie comes out. I have not done it yet, but I have found myself more than once being like, I should hop over to the Regal, pop in, and just get me a medium butter, medium popcorn with butter, and just enjoy it. I don't know. It's definitely popped, Beowulf, so it definitely has kernels. I don't know. Maybe it's just because of the oil or something. I don't know. Well, we can't really do a deep dive on Pendragon, because in order for me to do a deep dive, I have to kind of know what I'm talking about. And I don't really know what I'm talking about when it comes to Pendragon. Like, yes, the books are out, but it exists in this sort of weird space where we've looked at the mechanics, and this would just basically be Derek reads the rule book. And I know that there's some sickos out there, probably you, Beowulf, who would love to just Derek reads the rule book. But number one, it's, problematic from like, I don't know if people would be upset if I'm just reading the rule book, but also two, it's not exactly content that I think helps a lot. So it is tough. Listen, think about Ryutama. It's not so much that it's bad. I mean, there's a lot about the game that speaks to the Japanese gaming community and gaming scene. It's more of just that, especially the intro Ryutama, or the intro Ryujin, is it the blue Ryujin, that literally is sort of like, you're here to tell a story and to take, to let your friends go on the story that you've written for them and have them experience the highs and the lows that you've pre-programmed. And here are all these like in-game abilities to fudge it. That's kind of where I found myself being like, whoa, it was so completely out of left field for me that it was hard for me to take it seriously. Because if you remember BCM, I don't know if you've actually watched it, but it was this elevator, or not elevator, it was this roller coaster ride. Because I started off being like, all right, this is kind of stupid. And then I was just like, oh, wow, this is actually really great. There's a lot here I really like. And, oh, okay, I get it. It's about journeys. It's about bonding. It's about friendship. Blah, blah, blah. I thought it was really great. And then we hit the rules for Ryujin, and I was just like, I lost my mind. But Anyways. So I don't think vitriol is the correct term. I mean, maybe it is the correct term, but I don't like hate it. I just, I really just, the style of play of the Ryujin, I think is very antithetical to my personal philosophy. The mechanics and the concept of the game, I think, is charming. So, what would it take for a shallow dive into spheres of power? Well, I guess the question is, what the hell is spheres of power? Are we talking about like the 20-year-old release for Pathfinder 1? Okay, so we are talking about the 3-point. All right. Chances are slim to none. Well, saying hi. Yeah. Alia's in chat, and Alia's like, Alia, I would say you're like a big stan of looking forward to TDE. For sure. I mean, I kickstarted it. I backed it. Let me see what level I backed it at. Head over to I think it was on Kickstarter, right? It was on Backer Kit. Oh, yeah. Not TDE. TDE is the dark guy. TBE, the Broken Empires. Too many games, too many acronyms. I'm looking it up here. The Broken Empires. Here we go. I backed at the $125 level. So I got the core starter bundle. So I didn't get the I get the core rulebook hardcover, the Broken Empires RPG starter set box, and then the PDF of the core rulebook, the starter set, and the GM screen. So you went all in? You got books for your players too? Jesus, that's a Smith move. I don't know. I'm what's the word? What's the opposite of cautiously optimistic? I'm cautiously pessimistic. I feel like it's going to be just a sim vomit of stuff. What's up, Strat? Good to see you. I didn't know you still watch streams. Scott outbacked me. Ryan is furious. He can't believe it. Yeah, I mean, backing digital is going to become more and more of the way. Actually, there's a thing now coming to Kickstarter. It just came out where basically now that tariffs are going to be such a problem, the Kickstarter now is going to give backers or the people who creators, they're going to have this option to put in this big tariff boost or something like that. You do occasionally. Okay, mostly the VODs. All right, fair enough. It was the Ars Magica component. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to like about the game. There's some game systems and Trevor's reasoning and system is well thought out. And I do think that the dice mechanic is going to be overly complex. That being said, it is probably, to me, the one that makes the most sense because it's using these, you look at the tens digit, how much did you beat, whatever, and then you get that many, ranks of success. So there's this kind of naturalistic flow to it because we've seen some D100 systems that were not really, didn't really make much sense. And then the D100 roll high systems are just, so that makes a lot of sense that it's going to place versus D for sure. I can't. What's up, Pumpkin? I can't back any Kickstarters. I got to save my money for the next couple months for the Switch 2. Lol. But is the Switch 2 gonna do anything actually different? $450. $850. Oh my God. I mean, I know everything's more expensive. I know it's like $20 to go to like, you know, McDonald's now, but my God, $450 is just crazy for a Switch 2. What's up, Corback? Good to see you, man. For that money, I could have backed DB at the GM level. It's 850 New Zealand, which is insanely overpriced. I mean, I like that. When I do the Google search, I said Switch 2 cost. It's like, how much money will the Switch 2 cost? Is Switch version 2 more powerful? Why is the Switch 2 so expensive? Increased manufacturing costs, the use of advanced technology, and potential tariff impacts. A larger screen, redesigned Joy-Cons, and the new online capacity. I was not a big Switch fan. We bought one, and I kind of just gave it to my ex-girlfriend. And she mostly uses it to play Animal Crossing. It is using blackjack roll under, I think. Yeah, you want to roll as high as possible while still rolling under your skill, because the tens digit is how many like orders of effect you have. So if your skill was 65, then you want to roll a 64, 65. And then also I think any doubles under is a crit. And if you exactly roll your skill, it's a crit. I think. SLs, success levels, yeah. Which is elegant. You know, I think, to a certain extent. I have been waiting on 13th Age 2 forever. Yeah, I think he actually says that he stole it from Delta Green. Well, because I mean, Trevor's very. I like. You know, I probably wouldn't have backed it. Yeah, and the ones digit is the hit location. That's correct, Lollipop. I wouldn't have backed it, but Trevor was very, very aware and cognizant, and not like trying to sweep it under the rug, that he's like, I love this system from this game. I played a ton of Warhammer Fantasy. I love this system from Delta Green. I love the magic from Ars Magica. I love the blah, blah, blah. And I love that he just, you know, took. BRP does roll high. Is that, I didn't know BRP wanted you to roll high. I didn't think BRP used success levels. Does it? I didn't think it did. So, so. Calhey. Okay. Yeah, I think BRP is very different, Beowulf. I mean, it uses a D100, if that's what you mean by it took it from BRP. I think the interesting thing is the blackjack mechanic, for sure. And I think, again, I could be wrong here, but I think it's if you roll doubles or the exact value, it's a crit, not like crit on a 5-. So it's the success levels it's the success levels part of the resolution system that interests me, I think, the most in that system. I agree with Trevor's opinions on so many games, so a system will probably be something I love. Yeah, here's where it loses me. Okay, here's where now we'll go over to the Broken Empires. I don't know how much information he has here, but it was like, you know, when he starts talking, because he says Sim-lite, right? So he that's the part where I think it's like potentially interesting, you know, because he's like, okay, you know, Sim-lite finds a delicate balance between the speed of rules-light games and the detail of simulationist games. By introducing time-saving new school concepts from narrative RPGs, while still providing enough details to paint an immersive picture for players, a Sim-lite experience blends the very best of old school and new. In short, it is the perfect combination of speed and detail in an RPG. The Broken Empires is the first Sim-lite TTRPG representing the best elements of 50 years of role-playing systems housed under one magnificent structure. I'm fucking sold on that. That sounds great. That sounds amazing. I don't know if it'll actually pull off, and I'm pretty, you know, persnickety about these things, but that is a good selling point. That sold me, you know, on it. However, you know, like, you know, I don't, you know, lethal combat, everyone dies. Like, I don't really care about that. Now, here's where you start to lose me. Okay? Right there. right there. Right there. Like more so than anything. Like when you infection, really, you know, like it's just of all the things that I want to be doing in my game system, tracking infection is like honestly like it couldn't be further at the bottom. So that's where I'm a little like, rah. But I mean, you know, it's combat zones, armor absorbs damage. Okay, I like armor absorb damage. No hit points, which is fine, you know. You know me, I love a good social intrigue system. Role play first, consequence-based system. Perfectly, it says perfectly mixes player choice and character skill. Now, nothing, we'll see if it plays out. But as I said before, quoting Ray Winiger, who wrote The Rules of Dungeon Craft, right? The best game, the best D&D adventures challenge the players and the player characters. That is when you've reached peak for Ray Winiger and for Derek, when you're challenging both. I don't want a game that's just played by the players and we ignore the rules and we ignore the dice and we ignore the PCs. That's why when people say, we just role play it out, I don't like that. I do not like that. But also, I don't like games where the player is just there to roll the dice and not make any real choices that have an impact on the game. So, we'll see. Okay, but where's my gamest game for gamers? I think it's called Pathfinder 2 in 4th edition, right? But, I mean, we'll see. But, I mean, doesn't sound like it's going to be super gamey. We'll see, Karamak. But my guess is this is not going to be a gamey game. I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep up here with the chat here. Sim-lite is the blast processing of 2024. Is there room for a new GURPS or a new approach to a system that encompasses everything? I don't think so, because I think D&D has become that, right? I think GURPS, D&D used to be fantasy adventure. And now that D&D is its own ecosystem entirely, I think that the allure of a one system to rule them all sort of doesn't mean anything anymore. And I think just now people go, oh, I use D&D to play my urban fantasy game. I use D&D 5e to play my space fantasy game. I use D&D 5e to play my modern espionage campaign, and so on and so forth. In a way, I think that even started with 3rd edition. When 3rd edition came out and the OGL came out, you know, that's when you saw D&D, D20 Modern, D20 Future, and not to mention 1.5 million hacks of everybody else who just stole the rules and printed them and reprinted them and sold it, but for every single different thing. Because the idea was your players already know how to play this game and it's easier to get them to buy in. Mine is a blackjack sandwich D100. Got to beat the DC 1 to 50, but no adding and subtracting modifiers. I see. So you have to roll. You can't roll too low, but you can't roll too high. Is that what you're trying to say? Interesting. I mean, at a certain point, I mean, isn't that just a DC system kind of at a certain point? But anyways, what's up, Brooke? Good to see you. Nothing says heroic TTRPG than tracking plus levels. So to be fair, it doesn't say anything about being a heroic RPG. So we'll see what it has to do. Another thing, according to GM Scott, Derek, is that he's not been afraid of killing his darlings. He has removed the personality pairs from Pendragon. Oh, okay. I've not been keeping up to date with the updates. There's just so many things going on, but yeah, I mean, again, we'll see where this infection thing lies. You know, Travis is like, yeah, it's not a level. I'm just not interested in it either, but a well thought out infection system can likely be leveraged for all sorts of things, get worse over time and dealt with. So I kind of like that. I like the idea of like an infection, not infection, literal infection, but I do like the idea of a progressing system of disabilities, but like specifically diseased, you know, and tracking wounds. Like that's where I kind of lose my interest. I mean, what are you talking that? I mean, I've been griping about that from Fate Accelerated Edition and Legend of the Five Rings and Powered by the Apocalypse and everything forever. That's nothing new. I mean, it's possible. Even if I do like the mechanical implementation of infection, say, if I do, it's still just not something like a mechanic can be good and I still don't like it, you know? That I do not know what the YouTube short from Matt Colville about. I don't watch shorts, so I don't know what that is. Sometimes they get me, like YouTube will just start like randomly showing me shorts. I didn't even know I was watching shorts. And I'm like, what am I doing? That's how they get you. Yeah, I mean, diseases have always been problematic. You know, I tried to use them in 3rd edition, and it was just like you either, you know, I mean, my experience with diseases is predominantly through 3rd edition or through D&D. And like, and you either didn't have cure disease and it just sucked, or you did have cure disease and you just got rid of it. So like that was kind of our experience with disease. And I think cure disease used to be, I think it's a 3rd level spell. So at 5th level, once you get to 5th level, somebody could cast cure disease, and then it just wasn't an issue anymore. Correct. It is a self-fulfilling prophecy, 100%. Everybody plays this, so I have to make my game this so that it'll work, right? Because no one will play it. What's up, Jamie? Travis, take care. Good night. Thank you. Jamie, any quick fire suggestions for getting a party of adventurers back to base camp during a West Marches game session? Struggling with justifying 5-minute dungeon crawl in game. So you're saying at the end of the West Marches, you want them to have to go back to base camp, is what you're saying? Well, what are they doing instead? Just like stopping in the middle of the dungeon? Are you playing with, when you say West, I mean, I have to be very specific here. When you say West Marches, do you mean that you are one GM and you have like 20 different players who play at different times all throughout the week or month, and that parties are never the same from time to time? West March, that's what a West March technically means, but some people use it to mean different things. Right. Okay. Got it. Okay. Well, no, that's okay. So my biggest advice is to either use a stick or a carrot. And I mean, the most extreme stick would just be like, you know, if you guys don't make it back to base camp, then, you can't earn your experience, or, you know, you get half as much experience. Like maybe include a thing where it's like, there's some sort of like, you know, you have to reflect on your time in the dungeon. You know, there's maybe a training montage or a rest montage scene. And if you don't go back to camp, then you either lose your experience or you lose a portion of it. You know, you really punish them. Now, that being said, a lot of times the big problem that people have, that I have with these type of games, is you're playing, you're excited, you know, you're getting through one more encounter, through one more room, through another cool area. And then you look at the time and it's 10 o'clock. And the temptation is to say, okay, you guys have to go back to your camp. And then it's like, okay, what am I supposed to do here? Hand wave the random encounters. What if they're in a place where they can't get back? And it can be kind of problematic and you know, kind of break it down from that perspective. So what a lot of people will do is they'll include some kind of modified random encounter chart, which is kind of like the idea that like the group is like not, you know, they're not retreating, but they're kind of beating, you know, they're falling back through areas that they've previously cleared. They are, you know, moving somewhat more quickly because they've already just covered this ground, and they're heading back to camp. And you can do kind of, and you know, a return to camp roll or a return to town roll, and, you know, kind of make your way in that respect. And then this table, you can make sure that it may have consequences and it may have effects, but it may not necessarily have combat or have some sort of random encounter. Or if it does, you can kind of, you know, wait till the next session to run it. But The problem is, like you said, if this is a group of people who want to be able to play the next time, then they can't stay in the dungeon, or you lock them out. You say, well, if you guys end the session in the dungeon, then you guys can't play your characters again until you're all available. and that's not really very practical or reliable. But I would definitely say that it's something that you want to think about. And the other option, those are the sticks, is a carrot as well. You could use both. A carrot is something like they get a bonus if they return to camp by the end of the session. So make it part of their plan that it's not just about getting in, it's about getting out and having a plan for that. And then if they return to base camp of their own accord, rather than having to rely on, say, a return to camp roll, that they actually get a bonus. But that if the situation comes up and the session ends, that you're going to make the return to camp roll, and there may be consequences to that. Ideally, ones that aren't just like you lose hit points that you're going to get back at camp anyways. So that's kind of my thought process. I mean, we thought about this a lot for Dragon Tide, which is our in progress to be launched eventually Dragonbane mega game. And my idea was I wanted to make it a archipelago world, and the town Storm Haven was that you would start the session by sailing to an island, and each GM would basically have their own island. And of course, the beginning of the, we don't want it to take up too much time, but we want there to be some choices and decisions and some, cool shit that happens on your boat on the way to the island that could eat up some playtime. Probably, hopefully no more than 15, 20, 30 minutes at most. But we understand that people play. And then suddenly it's 11 o'clock, it's 10 o'clock, the session's over, we got to get back to town. And we didn't want to have another 20 or 30 minute return to town sailing session. Plus, it's just not the way movies work, right? You never see them go home, right? The journey there is somehow super perilous, and they have to, overcome all these obstacles. And then they get there, they do the thing, and then they just sail home or, just fly home. It's always super easy. So our idea was to do more of like a return roll, return to port, I think is what it's called, at the end of the session. And when the time's up, and you make that, and you kind of, it's a little bit hand wavy for sure, but it is part of the, problem. It's part of the consequence of playing that style of game. Going back to Broken Empires, he says, very much not a heroic RPG. Beowulf is heartbroken because he dropped Pendragon traits. It's very true. There's like heroic in the modern sense, and then there's like heroic in the Greek sense. We convinced him to keep it in the appendix as an optional rule. If you click on shorts, then quickly click somewhere else, it'll still load shorts. Fair enough. Yeah, it's just annoying. They really try to get you in there. Yeah, that is the KOLC disease indeed. Well, the true KOLC disease is what I have, is when you've learned from too many systems, and now everything that you do. Again, I respect Trevor, but his style of creating a game just wouldn't work for me. I know it sounds crazy, but the idea of going, I like this mechanic from this game, I like this, and don't get me wrong, I think this is a valid approach. I'm not saying it's invalid, just not for me. I've complained when people say, oh, I love, this is what I complain about house rule. Like, what's the difference between a GM is a designer? What's the difference between a house ruler and a designer? A house ruler takes a system, sticks it into their system because they like it. A designer builds a new system from scratch using these components in an integrated way so that the entire system is a coherent whole. And that is what Trevor is doing. The problem I have is that that just makes me feel like I'm a hack. Like I'm just, cribbing and stealing from somebody else. I would need to have, don't get me wrong, you're going to eventually have a mechanic that someone else has used before. But what I'm saying, like for me to make a game system, it would have to have something truly like new, truly revolutionary, truly new at its core that no one else had done. Like, we may end up using ability scores. We may end up using skill ranks. We may end up using something that, oh, he clearly was inspired by Avatar Legends or something like that. That's totally fine. But that fundamental core of the game, for me, to make a game system, would have to be something extraordinary in that regard. It would need to be something truly innovative and new. Doesn't have to necessarily mean it like completely, what is it? What are you going to do? Stop the wheel from turning? No, I'm going to break the wheel. It doesn't have to like be, I don't have to like overthrow 50 years of RPG dogma. I just want something that is like truly new and innovative. The problem, well, we'll see how this resolves out. The problem is that bringing back traveling mattering, and I'm saying this with love. I've played a lot of traveling games lately, including games that are based on traveling, like Forbidden Lands. And you know what? Putting mechanics into traveling doesn't make it exciting. Making characters have skills that affect traveling doesn't make it exciting. Just because you have mechanics and references for a thing doesn't make it a good thing. In fact, one of the things that I would love to dig more into is on her last appearance on RFC. This is kind of what led to the whole discussion of Shadow Deep. Was because we were talking about hex crawls versus dungeon crawls, and I said go hex crawls, and Stephen Glicker was like, no, hex crawls are the future. And Kelsey said something along the lines of, I think people got it wrong with hex crawls. I think hex crawls shouldn't be played at the table. They should be played between sessions, and that resonated with me like fire. I was like, that is hot fire. That is a great take. I don't know if that's something she just thought of, or it's something maybe the way she used to play, or some sort of insight that she has into the old style, or maybe it's just a uniquely Kelsey thing. But yeah, it's that I think is a really interesting take, because her point was hex crawls. That's like the procedural boring part to get to the exciting part. The exciting part is the adventure site. Right? The exciting part is the dungeon. It's the adventure. It's the cool location with the, cool treasure and the cool monster. Moving around, on the hex map and making random rolls and quartermaster rolls and bushcraft rolls and survival rolls and making them, 30 times a session. Maybe it's really fun for you. We've done it in a couple of campaigns now, most recently in Forbidden Lands. And it just it's not interesting. It's not, in my opinion, it's not particularly compelling gameplay. You need something else, something more juicy. I don't know what it is. Okay. Well, hey, DM Rawlings talking about the return roll. Yeah, exactly. Good stuff. Your view is to make the table pretty harsh. Yeah, I think you can set the tone of your game a lot better. Depending on what you want to do with that return roll. If you want to be harsh, if you want to be punitive. I would say, if I was so inclined, is I would give the players if I was, like, my thought process on a return roll table, let's just pretend for a moment that's like a D100 table. I would say that you should have a penalty or a bonus to the roll that maybe even the players are aware of, depending on their actions. Basically, if the players are trying to use the return roll in order to sort of get out of jail, I think that should be punished. If the players just play till they get, somewhere interesting, and then the session, you've run out of time or you're nearly out of time and they need to go back, I think that is less problematic. Because the truth is, I don't want the players to actually kind of go back to camp in regular play. I'd rather them play and make progress and get to interesting stuff, because otherwise you're going to have a session where, halfway through it or 2/3 of the way through it, the players are going to suddenly say, okay, well, we've got an hour and 20 minutes left. I guess we need to go back to camp. What if there's random encounters? What if there's stuff that pops up? We don't want to get screwed. And then they go back. And what if they go back to camp and it didn't have any random encounters. And now you're like, okay, well, there's an hour left in the game session. I guess we're done here. You know, I want them to keep playing and then make the return roll. You know, I think that to me makes more sense. West Marches seems better suited for a bro SR philosophy playstyle. I don't actually know what bro SR means. Does it mean like racist, you know, sexist, misogynist OSR people? I don't actually really know what bro SR means. Is it just like a general poo-pooing on the OSR? I don't know that term. I've heard it maybe used a couple of times. It sounds derogatory. I agree, Beowulf. It sure is. It is easy when your cartographer makes a card. When your party cartographer makes a map. That is very true. Yeah, it's okay. You don't lose the treasure. I mean, you have to come up with a penalty that seems appropriate to you. Are carrots and sticks really necessary? Yes. Yeah. I mean, the whole game is based off of incentivizing. I mean, you know, flanking. You encourage that by giving them a modifier bonus. I mean, the whole game is about that. I mean, the problem also there is sparks the most joy. It's not about joy. It's about mechanics of, in a Western Marches game, you need to get the players out of the dungeon or out of the adventure or out of the wilderness back to quote unquote town. Because otherwise it creates a temporal paradox. You could be very heavy-handed about it. As I said, there could be an element here of Deus Ex Machina. I like DM Rawlings, he called it Wizard Ex Machina. You could definitely do that, but you know, you could be very heavy-handed with it, but you know, it depends. It depends on how heavy-handed you want to be with it, I suppose. That would certainly work. Actually, here, let me show you the intro. Let me see if I can actually pull this up. Let me show you the intro to one of, I'll say, my favorite game, even though it's not. So there was a game that came out called Dungeon Hack. Okay. This game came out like 94. Okay. So this is a DOS game. And it was made by Strategic Simulations. And it used the Eye of the Beholder game engine. Okay. And this is Dungeon Hack. This is the ultimate intro. Okay.
Shadow, swamp, gloom and vine, a fog does rise to cloud my mind, to hide the prize I seek to find. O ancient orb, where rest you now?
My lady, I have answered your summons. I am prepared to...
Yes, I see it. A place of traps to crack brave bones. There lies the orb, far, far away. An ancient dungeon, and within it lies the orb.
It's a strong magic that can point to maps. Now, what will you be paying me to fetch the orb?
There lies gold and gem enough for any man. Take what you will, but return the orb to me.
You'll pay me now, or I'll never get there.
Horses, supply,
I need horses,
supplies.
supplies.
Enough. Let the journey begin.
odds, blood. My insides feel all twisted about. Shall we see what awaits? Bring on your worst, dungeon. I am ready.
All right. Well, there you go. That was the intro to Dungeon Hack, where they literally just go on this quest. What are you going to pay me? Loot the dungeon. All right. Well, I need, it's going to take me forever to get. All right. Well, I'm just going to teleport you there. And then the adventurer is like, and a lot of those things are like things Smith and I always used to say, like, I need food, horses, supplies. Or, bring on your worst dungeon. I am ready. Anyways. So, yeah, there you go. You could do that for your Western marches, right? I'll just zap you into the dungeon. And when I'm ready, when you're done, I will zap you back. Hey, what's up? Finally got caught up. And holy shit, after watching hundreds of hours of KOC at 2x, it's so slow. Yeah, I mean, that's like me. Why, when I watch people I can't watch people on Twitch. If I watch them like their clips on YouTube, I watch them at 2x or 2.5x, and then if I watch them in real life, real time, it's so slow. Apologize for that. It took so many lines of BASIC to write this. Let's see. What was the Eye of Beholder game series written in? Custom engine built by Westwood Associates. Doesn't say. It was not written in BASIC. It was written in C. So there you go. It was written in C. There you go. GM Scott. It was written in C. Everything was written. Yeah, like it could be like a form of like astral projection, right? Where you're like still connected. Actually, did we ever go into this? I don't remember if we ever went into this, but like, right, the OG save point for high level characters was definitely the astral projection spell, which if you're not familiar with the astral projection spell, it's a high level spell. I think it's like 9th level. So it is like end game stuff. But when you cast astral projection, basically you kind of go Doctor Strange, right? Your astral spiritual self, which obviously has an astral spiritual duplicate of all your equipment, separates from your body, and now you can basically leave the material plane, travel through the astral plane at like sort of like faster than light speeds, go to the outer planes and adventure there. And if you die, your spirit and soul just get zipped back to your body. So like, even if you die, you don't actually die. The only way that you could die is if what's called your silver thread or your silvery thread is connected, which is connected in your body to your spirit self, is severed. But like, it takes like, a direct God to do it. And yeah, exactly, Beowulf. And when you do go to a new plane, it like creates a physical body for you there. But it joins you, back to your original one. And if you die in that plane, your physical form there dies, and you turn into, silvery nothing, and you zip back across the planes. And like, there's certain astral storms, like astral hurricanes that can like just sever the silvery cord. But also, yes, the silver swords of the Githyanki can also sever it. So Githyankis are punks. My point is, like, you could kind of have a game based off of that. In case anyone's interested, Dungeon Hack is in the Forgotten Realms: The Archives, Collection 3, available on Steam or GOG. It's 50% off on Steam. All right, hold on a sec here. Wait. I'm updating. Oh, I don't think I've ever played Good Old Games. I'm not entirely sure, Beowulf. That part I'm a little fuzzy on. I have a question. Why is like Steam like so Steam like why is it just like so complicated and have so much stuff? It's crazy. Forgotten Realms, the archives. Forgotten Realms. Oh, here we go. All right, we got Collection 1, Collection 2, and Collection 3, all 50% off, which is a whopping $5. Holy crap, what is this? All right, what do we got here? Yeah, but tell me what games are in it. Oh, this has got Eye of the Beholder 1, 2, and 3. Oh, that's sick. Those are some of my favorite games of all time, especially Eye of the Beholder 2, Legend of Dark Moon. This is fantastic. I played this on my Commodore Amiga in my home game, or in my bedroom. Collection 2 looks like it's gold box. We've got Pools of Radiance. Yep, Pool of Radiance, Curse of the Azure Bonds, Secrets of the Silver Blades, Pools of Darkness, and Gateway to the Savage Frontier, which was an unofficial, sequel to the gold box. Oh, and then what's in Collection 3? Oh, I see Menzo Baranzan. Yes, Menzo Baranzan. Oh, it's Menzo Baranzan and Dungeon Hack. These were the last two games that came out of SSI. Oh, Menzo Baranzan is so hilarious. So Menzo Baranzan was it was the last SSI game, I think, that had the D&D license, and it came out like 94, something like that, 95. Does it say? Oh, release date 2002. That's not the case. Anyways, it came out. Now I need to look when it actually came out. Somebody in the chat, look at when Menzo Baranzan came out. But anyways, it was actually like a 3D game. Like it didn't have it was a little bit more like you could move around a little bit. But what was really funny about this game, which we thought was just so hilarious, was Dritz would join your party. And, he's obviously an important NPC. And if Dritz were about to die, he would go, 94, thank you, James Scott. If Dritz were about to die, Dritz, like, if his character basically died in your party, Dritz would be like, I have pressing business elsewhere. I must leave you. And then he would, like, leave the party rather than die. So it was this kind of like thing where like Dritz would like join you, and then if he died, he would leave the party and then come back later because he couldn't die because he was important to the plot. But it was hilarious because I remember Smith was playing this game at my house. He got wiped except for Dritz. So his whole party was dead except for Dritz. And Smith was like, that's fine. Dritz is the only person that's good anyways. I mean, you can see right here in this screenshot, if I zoom in on it, you can see, right, like this person here in the second position is very clearly Dritz, right? They're dual wielding scimitars. They've got, detect magic, fairy fire, globe of darkness, hide in shadows, and levitate, right? Like you would expect Dritz to be. Anyways, but it's hilarious because Smith's entire party was dead except for Dritz. And then Dritz died, and Dritz is like, I must leave you. My presence is needed elsewhere. And then Dritz left the party, and then like the TPK you've died screen popped up on screen. Oh, I have such fond memories of that game. No, the SSI games were all great. I mean, this for me was like the definitive D&D experience on computers until Icewind Dale, Baldur's Gate stuff came out. And especially Menzo Baranzan, Dungeon Hack. True story about Dungeon Hack is Dungeon Hack would create these randomly generated procedural dungeons, but there was an option that you could print them out. And so like we used to like play the dungeons in Dungeon Hack just to print them out. And I remember Dungeon Hack was really awesome because maybe it might have been Eye of the Beholder 3 actually. But Eye of the Beholder 1 and Eye of the Beholder 2 did not have a mini map. And Eye of the Beholder 3 might have, but Dungeon Hack did. And it was so cool because like no game had ever had like a mini map before that, like, auto updated, auto mapped when you went through it. It was pretty cool. I mean, Might and Magic Clouds of Zine did, but yeah. Anyways. Sorry, I got off on a whole massive tangent there. Collection 2's got Pool of Radiance. Sick. What's up, Kyle? You can put these on our Twitch Let's Play lists. Here you go. Yeah, here, this is This is a dungeon hack dungeon. I mean, it was literally, because the thing about dungeon hack was it's kind of like a roguelike, I guess, in that it was all randomly procedurally generated. The difference is like if you died, it's not like you started over again and needed to play through it all again. You would just save back to your load point. But dungeon hack, I do remember, had an Iron Man mode where if your character died, you could save, but if your character died, it deleted your save. And that was the way we liked to play. Such a cool game. I mean, it's literally just going through a dungeon as a solo adventurer and fighting stuff, but it had its allure at the time. I love it. You guys are like, oh, that would be awesome to watch Derek play 30-year-old video games. Yeah, there you go. You could print or save to disk. Yeah, it probably came out around the same time as Doom 2, give or take. Actually, do I have it on my screen here? What up? Orkison.
Orkison tip $10. Love the idea of inter-session hex map travel. Makes GM prep work easier as well. Though I suppose it makes random encounters a lot more difficult. Would you just do narrative events during travel and then resolve them at the start of session?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I guess some of it requires a fundamental re-understanding of what a random encounter is and how we handle it. But there's a part of me that loves the idea of a kind of play-by-post hex crawl version that you can play with your party when you're not at the session, and use that time to sort of, get there. Yeah, I probably have the tip volume turned down because we had guests on. Whenever I have guests on, I don't like it to scream out over the guests. So I'll repeat what Orcus Son said because people may not have heard it. Here we go. So Orcus Son said, love the idea of intersession hex map travel. Makes GM prep work easier as well, though I suppose it makes random encounters a lot more difficult. Would you just do narrative events during travel and then resolve them at the start of a session? Again, you could certainly do that, but like I said, I think it kind of involves recontextualizing what a random encounter is, and this is part of the reason why I think if I were to ever, one of the things that I would want to have in my fantasy RPG Heartbreaker is I would want to have a way to, in a satisfying manner, and by satisfying, I mean satisfying for the Vins and the alias out there, have a way to resolve combat that didn't involve going into round by round initiative order. Now, I've said before, one of the reasons I love running Blades in the Dark is because I could be running a Blades in the Dark game and the crew gets involved in a street fight, blades are drawn, flintlocks are unholstered, and I could say, okay, it's a good old-fashioned street fight. And I will have the group make a single group check. Consequences will be dulled out. Narratives will be described. Some stress might be taken. And we can resolve it in a fairly fast fashion. Now, you might say that sounds very unsatisfying. But Blaze in the Dark doesn't really have an alternative to that. I mean, sure, you can make a bunch of individual actions, but they're all still fundamentally the same. But when you do that in D&D, you feel like you're taking away a lot of the player's agency, or at least the players do feel like they're being taken, because they're like, I would be able to make choices about what feats or powers or abilities or positioning and all this other stuff. And that there's truth to that. So if you just sort of, reduce a combat to a single roll, it could feel like I feel like I didn't have any sort of input on that output. So that's where it's kind of a problem. But I will say that I love the idea of doing sort of a play-by-post inter-week game where the players kind of make those kind of hex crawl-based decisions. But I was looking for something on my board here. Will I find it? That remains to be seen. Oh. Sick. Here is the AD&D first edition Ruins of Adventure, and this published in 1988 was basically it uses the same locations from Pools of Radiance, and so it actually kind of functions as a strategy guide to Pools of Radiance. And and no lying. The reason I own this module was because I wanted help with beating pools of radiance. But this is like one of the oldest modules that I own. But anybody, obviously, if you know your gold box games, you know this art for sure. The ways were an interesting experiment in that sort of super fast combat and art. Yeah, it was. And, you know, again, I think some people really liked it and some people did not like it. But I mean, you needed to be able to resolve that in a satisfying way. This is part of the reason why I'm so fascinated by the idea of creating, and Beowulf knows this, a tactical combat system that does not use minis or the grid or anything like that. And you might say, what would that even look like? Well, kind of an example of that is Torchbearer. Now, Torchbearer's conflict system still goes too slow for my liking, but fundamentally it is a tactical system, even if it's not grid-based. Too many people think tactical means, you know, moving minis around on a grid. It does not. Tactical simply means that you are making moment-to-moment decisions that have an impact on the outcome. Whereas if I say, okay, everybody make a group check, you know, you're not really getting to make any choices, you know. That is true. I mean, you know, the game is about what the game is about. The game is about capers and crime. Although, to be clear, I use group checks a lot in Blades in the Dark. It's probably part of the reason why my games move so quickly is because I lid a lot of time by basically saying, yeah, we'll make a group check and then we'll go, you know, from there. You know, and I'll cover like massive swaths of the game, I think, that everybody, you know, does from that perspective. Oh, yeah. I mean, we were talking about that on the one tangent, right? About the art and how I really love the second edition style art, and even to a certain extent, the third edition style art, because it really looks more realistic. And I think that is more fun for sure. I think turn-based Final Fantasy, when I hear tactical combat without a grid, you know, yeah, sort of. I mean, there's an element of that, but I will say I found this really, really fascinating. Let me pull this up. I think it was Ben Milton's channel, Questing Beast. I couldn't remember the name of his channel. I could only remember his name. Questing Beast. All right. I found this really interesting. This was a poll. Keep in mind that, you know, Ben has a lot more subscribers than me. He has almost 100K. Good for him. Almost 100K. Geesh. Ben did a poll, and he said, what mechanics would you like to see used in RPGs that usually aren't? I survey 20 options here, but put your ideas in the comment. And the winner was card mechanics. Deck build I mean, it had the majority and the plurality, obviously, but it, you know, even had the majority at 52%, which was, you know, deck building and drafting. And, you know, and it's interesting. The reason why this is really interesting to me is because obviously Questing Beast and Ben's audience are much more, you know, traditionalist, OSR, minimalists, you know. I have not. I've heard it used as a tarot deck, but I don't know if that's interesting to me the way that I've heard it described, but I have not looked at it yet. So no, I have not. I think some patrons have tried to get it as a first look, but I have not taken a look at it yet. Dora, that is interesting. Although I suppose if you wanted none of the above, wouldn't you just like not vote? What the hell does that even mean? Yeah, exactly. Explain deck building card mechanics. I like the cards in Feast. No, that's That's nothing like a deck builder card mechanic. He likes building outdoor decks of wooden nails. He's got a great deck, huge deck. A deck builder in a traditional sense means that you start with, usually you as a player, start with a basic deck of cards, and the abilities that you can do each turn are drawn from that deck of cards. But usually it's a input randomness and then output non-randomness. So you draw a hand of 5 cards, and maybe in the beginning everyone's deck is very similar, or maybe it varies based off of what path you chose. So you chose the path of the fighter, the path of the caster, the path of the the expert. So you have some slightly different abilities in your deck than other people. Maybe the fighter has some more shield bash cards or whatever. And then as you play the game, maybe as you level up or through action through play, you can customize and build your deck, adding cards, removing cards, so that it becomes more customized to your particular protocol. And the idea of a traditional deck builder is that your deck is your deck. Essentially, your deck represents your card. It represents your character. It represents what your character will be able to do at any given point and time and space. So by sculpting that deck, you determine to a certain extent. So it's kind of a randomness sandwich, right? Because you're making a player choice about what cards to put in your deck. Then the randomness is, okay, but what cards am I going to draw into my hand? And then we get back to determinism. We get back to where you say, I'm going to play this card. And at that point, traditionally, most of the time, the randomness is no longer as much of an effect. The card just does what the card does. The random part was, what cards did you draw that combat, that round, that turn, that whatever, Yeah, Smith had he had a Rise of the Rune Lords and maybe the pirate one. We played it a couple times. I thought it was okay, for sure. In this game, right? You draw a hand of cards, and that's tied to your level, how many cards you have in your hand, and these are the cards that you can play. And then as you take damage, you have to discard cards that have enough value equal to the damage that you took. So if I took 6 damage, I couldn't just discard this 5. That wouldn't be enough to absorb that damage. I'd have to discard one of these 7s. And now my hand is less, right? I have less options as I start losing that. That all depends on the way that the game is structured and built. In the most simplest of deck builders, like a game like Dominion, which is a board game, when your deck is empty, and you would go to draw from it and it's empty, then you reshuffle and you draw again. But there are other games that are sort of like deck builders, like Gloomhaven, which it's essentially like an action that you take in combat to sort of shuffle back in your cards and things of that. Do you think Questing Beast actually meant the board gamer's definition of deck building as you described, or did he mean the MTG deck constructions, which is commonly also mistakenly called deck builders? I don't know, Jim Scott. I don't know. To be fair, building a deck in construction is also called deck building. But he also mentioned in his thing here, which is crazy to me. Drafting. Right, the idea of drafting cards in your collectible, in your drafting cards in your TTRPG. Think of the verisimilitude, Derek. Why can't I cast a fireball? I just cast it. What's interesting is, right, we've been doing that for 50 years. You cast fireball and you can't cast it again. That's just, and everyone goes, oh no, because it's Vancian. And I go, okay. Explain that. And they go, the energy of the spell is locked in your brain. And I don't actually know. They don't actually try to explain it anymore. They just kind of you kind of just do it. Well, that's fair. More the fighter, more less of the mage. Yes, but they're the thing that they're not, Brandon, though, is you have access to all of your spells at once. So that's why it is not a deck builder game in that respect, because there's no randomness. You always have access to all of your abilities and all of your spells. In my opinion, in a deck-based game, the choices that you would have for a given conflict or encounter or whatever would be randomly determined as such. Oh, you could definitely do that. Right. Yes. Right. Donald X came out with Dominion, and that it was so popular that it led to 10 years of everybody using deck building mechanics. But that's because it's a very, type thing. A very popular thing. And fantasy magic is terrible, so there is that. Yeah, that's fair. Well, I guess it comes down to making the game, trying to make the game more fun. Because a lot of these RPG games aren't really fun games, They might be fun as holistic entities, but the game itself is not really that interesting. And again, my goal here is, I think they're just so deluded into thinking that what we think of as a simulationist thing is a simulationist thing at all. I might argue that playing with a deck builder and like having, I don't know, weird red, blue, green zones might make more sense than what most people think of in D&D, where you have this 6-second round where everybody moves in discrete chunks while everybody else is time stopped. And like like the idea that is somehow a accurate simulationist reflection of anything resembling a real conflict is so crazily bizarre to me that it boggles my imagination. It is so gamist. And the fact that people can't understand that is super gamist is crazy to me. It's just so crazy to me, because it is. It's nothing. It's not even close to resembling anything that would be close to small scale unit tactics. I'm true. But what are we talking about doing here? Making the best game or making the most popular game? I agree that people expect something, even if it's, bad. I agree. I think hack and slash from Dungeon World is so much more realistic than any D&D turn-based combat. I completely agree with you. It's interesting. YouTube recommended something to me. Okay. It was from maybe it heard us talking about the D&D movie, right? Okay. D&D, what's it called? Honor Among Thieves, Final Fight. Here we go. Hopefully this isn't too loud. It's a little loud. All right. Okay. There she is. And this is what's really interesting to me. And this is going to be like a great question for everybody here. I'm going to skip forward. I'm going to try to find this specific spot here. Okay, here it is. Okay. So for those of you who didn't see this movie, which is probably nobody, there's this like animated statue that's fighting them. It's like a dragon thing. Okay. So the barbarian's getting attacked. Okay. Chris Pine, the bard, pushes her out of the way and jams her axe, which had been disarmed, by the way, into the creature's mouth presumably to prevent it from attacking. He succeeded, right? He put the thing in the mouth, right? And then it snapped it in half. Throws it aside. He then dodges or leaps over the creature's attack. He comes up to this market stall, grabs the rope, and throws the cape over the creature to, blind it, confuse it, whatever. And he succeeds. Look at the creature. It's running away. It's crashing through some, stalls. He succeeded. But he looks down and oops, the rope is around his feet. And now he is getting pulled around. Now, you could not do that in D&D. Right? Everything that you basically were just seeing there were partial successes. Everything that was just going on there was partial successes. Because, or yes, or another way to, yes. I mean, technically it is called a success with consequence. So right, I completely agree, George. 5e has no rules to display that scene, right? So, like, if you watch this movie, it is literally partial success over partial success over partial success over. It is literally nothing but nonstops 7, 8s, and 9s with the occasional 6- and the occasional 10+. Okay. You'll also notice that the bard. Good point, Brandon. The bard took like 4 turns there in a row. Like, what were the wizard and the druid and the barbarian doing? Nothing, apparently, right? No, the camera was focused on Chris Pine, the bard, And we were, we were really invested in his character, right? So I argue, right, we could go back to this point here. Chris Pine pushes her out of the way, throws that up, jams it into the creature's teeth. It breaks it, throws it aside. He runs away, and the creature tries to swipe him, and he bounces up. I argue that sequence right there is a 6- move. I think that is a failure because, look at what happened. I mean, he didn't stop the creature from attacking. Her axe got broken by the creature. But does this make him look like a loser? No, he actually looks like he's really competent and he looks like he's actually really brave and he's really cool. 6-. That's a 6-. And then, the GM describes how he bites it, rips it apart, and starts swinging his axe. So Chris Pratt makes a defy danger move to escape from the dragon, leaps over his thing, maybe gets a 10+ without any issues. He seems to be doing very well. And then, or maybe, he says that the monster's now chasing you. Maybe it was a 7, 8, 9. You avoid the damage, but now the monster's chasing you. Oh, the monster's chasing me? Yeah. I look around. What about, I go to one of the market stalls. Is there like a cloth? Yeah, sure. I grab it. I'm going to pull it over and blind him. Cool. Defy danger. Roll plus dex. I got a 9. The creature's totally blinded and he blah, 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 blah. But the rope is strapped around your feet. It pulls tight and taut and starts pulling you across the courtyard, dragging you. You take D6 points of damage while the dragon continues to bash through stall after stall after stall, taking damage and damage and damage, being pulled further and further away. It tries to fly, but it can't. It's grounded. It rubs to the ground before skidding to a stop. So this was, in PBA terms, in my opinion, a miss followed by a partial success. So, like, that's an example of I think, the power of PBTA is that it creates these more narrative cinematic moments. And so when people watch D&D Honor Among Thieves, what they're really watching is a Powered by the Apocalypse game. And then they probably go to play D&D and they're very disappointed, I would imagine. Well, no, he can't have rolled a 1, Shadram. Because if he rolled a 1, he would not have been successful at all. The D&D is a great movie. Is a great movie about how to play PBTA. I agree. Right. Exactly, Shadram. Hard move. It doesn't work. And the barbarian's weapon gets broken. Pro tip, players don't come to games for the same things they do in movies. Playing this out sounds fucking awful. Is that really true? Because Dungeon World 2 doesn't seem to think so. Because Dungeon World 2 is actually trying to make Dungeon World more like the D&D movie. So, because apparently that is when, you know. Boo this man. I should have a boo. Boo. I don't have a boo, but I should have a boo. I'll say, let's see. Epidemic. Accept. Continue with Google. Yeah. Jesus Christ. It's like, you think I'd signing into like the DOD, Department of Defense, for frickin', you know, looking up a sound effect. That's kind of bad. Oh, here we go.
What are you doing? Get off the stage right now!
Terrible!
Shocking! Go on, get off!
Get it off!
Anyways, rubbish, filth, scum, muck, boo, boo. You had love, true love, and you threw it away like garbage. And that's what you are. The queen of garbage, filth. Tipping to finally hear about Dungeon World 2. Sure. I mean, I guess. We don't know what the final product is going to be. Your example fits well, but I would argue the check density is too high. T-Bone, the check density only matters if we are doing things that are going to move and advance the fiction. There are many instances in in PBTA games where I will make 5 or 6 checks in rapid succession. As long as it flows from the fiction to the fiction. I think the problem is when you believe that everything needs a check. But if we're in a dramatic high stakes moment, I want checks. Checks are going to generate partial successes and GM moves and player full successes, which is going to keep sort of the wheel, keep the wheel on spinning. Take care, Shadram. Okay, so basically the problem I have with Dungeon World is been that the player Powered by the Apocalypse system has advanced, and they have there's new tech that I think is actually much more interesting and compelling. And so for a long time, I've been one of those people who doesn't really particularly love the idea of hit points in Dungeon World. And the reason I don't love hit points in Dungeon World is because hit points are a dead end, fictionally. And I was delighted to see that again, this is stuff that's been talked about for 5 or 10 years. So, I may have come up with this thought myself, but I'm sure influenced by many people who've talked about Dungeon World over the years. And there have been many, many hacks of Dungeon World, Chasing Adventure, Homebrew World, blah, 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 that have sort of gotten away with it. But the issue with hit points is hit points do not affect or represent the fiction. And I think that's what's so important. And what I mean is they are a narrative dead end. So the classic example is, the fighter's fighting an orc, and maybe the fighter misses their check, and so you do damage to the fighter. You roll D6 damage of hit point damage, and now the fighter is reduced in hit points, which has a game mechanical effect. But it doesn't affect the fiction. Nothing has changed in the fiction. It's not a new situation. It's not moving the story forward. It's not doing anything. And so when I started playing more like World of Dungeons and Dungeon World and started getting into this idea of conditions, I liked the idea of, instead of focusing on just a ablative resource that eventually goes to 0 and then it means something, is what I like about conditions is every time that there is a consequence due to an action, it is something that is fictionally impactful. And getting away from Dungeon World, I very often, I ignored the hack and slash rules very often, because the hack and slash rules basically say on a partial success, you deal your damage, and the creature deals its damage back to you. And I didn't like that. There are many times with partial successes in Dungeon World, I would ignore that move. So Derek's hack and slash, where essentially more like World of Dungeons with the Defy Danger move, I'd be like, okay, you did your damage, and the creature, the troll is cut deeply, and then it looks down at you and kicks you square in the chest, and you go sailing across the battlefield and land in a heap in a barrel, a pile full of barrels, dazed and stunned for a moment. Now we've had a moment, right? The fiction has changed. Instead of just saying you take 3 damage, you take 3 damage it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't change anything in the fiction. And that's why it's just very, very, very frustrating. So I really like some of the tech, if you will, the PBTA tech, which has evolved to make the game more about fiction-focused results or consequences rather than hit points. All that being said, they seem to be moving in that direction for Dungeon World 2. So it's kind of exactly what I would do. But that is a problem because the reason Dungeon World was successful was because people could go to it from D&D and they saw 6 stats and hit points and classes and races, and they were like, oh, okay, I know this. And so while I would make that change, I don't think that the fact that I would make that change probably means it's a very terrible, bad business decision / what is the point of Dungeon World? If the point of Dungeon World is to be an entry point for people who are moving from a traditional, let's say 5e based game and moving into a world of PBTA, Dungeon World filled this interesting role of having these kind of mechanics. Now, I will admit that I do think it is problematic and it teaches bad behaviors in PBTA. So, with the blessing comes a curse. Now, quite separately and quite unexpectedly, they are doing something else with Dungeon World 2, which I full-heartedly disagree with. And that is, Dungeon World was fundamentally the original authors, Sage and Adam, going, let's take D&D, especially red box, basic D&D, the D&D we grew up with, and let's use Powered by the Apocalypse rules to basically fill in the gaps. And what it really came down to is doing D&D, essentially, and just having 3 outcomes instead of 2. Having 3 levels of success, right? Full success, partial success, and no success, except turning no success into the GM move so that it still, again, affects the fiction. There's never a world where you just miss and nothing changes. And that's great. The game's about dungeon and adventuring and torches and shields and swords. Because that is what D&D is about. Or is it? And the answer is no. At least not according to the people at Dungeon World 2. Dungeon World 2 has said, basically, Dungeons and Dragons isn't that anymore. It's Stranger Things. It's Critical Role. Where in the past, D&D was known for dungeon survival and powerful treasure, now Dungeons and Dragons is known for dramatic scenes featuring fantastic characters. People still play TTRPGs for many reasons, but someone looking for a D&D type experience today means something very different than it meant 20 or 30 years ago. Thus, the type of D&D story that we want to emulate is about a group of messy, flawed people embarking on dangerous fantasy adventures who then grow into a heroic found family. This is the central narrative of not only many D&D campaigns, but also stories in general. Some examples of touchstones are Legends of Vox Machina, Dungeons and Dragons, Honor Among Thieves, and Guardians of the Galaxy. So basically, with Dungeon World 2, they are saying Dungeon World isn't about dungeons. Dungeon World is about Critical Role. And that's meaning, it's a fantasy drama simulator. Yes. Right. It's about finding family. It's about Fast and the Furious, Guardians of the Galaxy. It's it's about touchstoning on those elements. Well, you say it sounds smart, but I think it's not, because I think what's going to happen is the people who are playing D&D type stories and are looking for that found family heroic adventure are going to try to play this game, and they're going to go, but this doesn't look like D&D. What the hell is all this crap? And they're going to nope out. But George says these guys are about 5 years too late in making this product. The CR critters would have loved this book then. So yeah. In fact, they say, we want to open up Dungeon World 2 to both new fans of both D&D and PBTA games. Ones who watch Critical Role, as well as the ones who play Masks, a new generation. And for those of you who are unaware, Masks is I won't say controversial. I don't even know where it is on my shelf. It's over there somewhere. It's a controversial PBTA game because people will say, oh, what's a PBTA superheroes game? And people will say, oh, Masks. And that's such bullshit, because Masks isn't a superhero RPG game. Masks is a teen drama, YA, WB, CW, Dawson's Creek teenage game that is masquerading, well, not masquerading, but it uses the pretext of superheroes to tell a game of teen drama. The same way that Monster Hearts uses the supernatural horror genre to tell a story of teen angst and, drama. Masks does the same thing, but with superheroes. And that, they are talking about targeting Critical Role people and people who apparently play Masks, a new generation, all 17 people who play that in the world. And that's their audience. And I think that is a flaw. I think that's a flawed audience, because I don't think that maybe the Masks people will enjoy it, but not all of them. So you're 17, you get 9 of them. But I think the Critical Role people are not going to want to play this game. So sure, it is probably targeted at a hipster crowd. And to be fair, PBTA has always had a certain hipster appeal. I will freely admit that. My explanation of Masks used so many abbreviations, and now I have less sense about what abbreviations did I use. But I think people, the mass market, actually like a bit of crunch. I don't know. Because I see a YA. YA means young adult. It means not like 11, 12-year-olds. It means like 13, 14, 15-year-olds. People who would like Twilight and Hunger Games and Divergent and all those stuff, My friend that's obsessed with Dungeon World and Masks will probably love Dungeon World 2. Yes, it is Masks, but instead of superheroes, it is fantasy characters, a la Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves, a la The Legend of Vox Machina. Oh, I had a string. Okay. Yeah, CW and the WB were channels, TV channels. CW Network TV was known for its poor writing. Okay, yeah. CW and WB was the Warner Brothers network. They're the ones that used to show like Dawson's Creek and, whatever, I don't know, Party of Five and the OC and all those, which is another thing. It was, the name of the show was the OC, but anyways, the other part of this is that the people who play D&D for the found family vibe are not interested in TTRPGs as a hobby. They are only interested in D&D. Yeah, so again, it's, they could have erased everything else. What they're really saying here is we want to create, we think that there is a vast number, we think the people who are playing and are interested in D&D, their version of what they think D&D means. And by D&D, by proxy, they mean the entire TTRPG industry. They think the vast majority of the mass market thinks that D&D means, emotional, flawed characters who come together over dangerous adventures with a very, epic storyline and grow into this heroic found family a la Critical Role. And they want to make the game that matches that. Because the people on Critical Role are obviously using 5e. But 5e doesn't do any of that. All of that stuff is happening because of the writing,
GM Scott tipped $25. I'm down to only 1 hit point. Time to
Thank you, GM Scott. GM Scott referring, of course, to his hype boss. He was down to 1 hit point, and he had to tip 25 to get the plus 50 HP to maintain his hype boss meter. I appreciate look. Heel's broken, GM Scott. It always is. I appreciate you, buddy. Yeah, you are probably not as good of an actor as the people you idolize on TV, Simon. That's very true. I just saying that I think that's. I mean, maybe that is. I mean, that is so true because people don't care about dungeons anymore. Yeah, exactly. Brandon, I agree. People don't read anymore. All they have is superhero stories. Critical Role, Marvels. There is no Elric. There is no Conan. There's no Lord of the Rings novels. Well, what's different about Old Dungeon World is that Old Dungeon World, the pretext was not about messy found family. It was about being a group of adventurers going and doing dungeons. And the mechanics supported that. And, it still used hit points, which, again, I would have gotten rid of. But I think that's a mistake because I think that's what made Dungeon World. It's what made it, tie into D&D. And now, granted, they point out there have been games like Chasing Adventure and Homebrew World and stuff, freebooters on the frontier that have added all that element. So why do we need to do that? That's why it's not Dungeon World 2nd Edition. It's Dungeon World 2. And that's fine. We can always add more games, more games into the mix. But again, I just think it's kind of, it's very interesting. And they ultimately end here with it. Ultimately, we want Dungeon World 2 to be the best D&D narrative game around. And, I guess what it comes down to, and I am wrong here. But if you watched my show the other day where I described how we played 3rd edition Dungeons and Dragons, right? With like the SWAT style mechanics and the deep recon elements and using divination to triangulate treasure caches so that we could coordinate our efforts for the next dungeon delve, using our skills and abilities from our class roles and spells lists to make plans of attack and engage, overcome encounters with minimal resource loss and maximizing our chance for survival. That is kind of what D&D is to me, because that's what the game mechanics and support have always been about. And I have no problem with that. I think that's cool. Obviously the modern generation thinks that D&D is, being a liberal arts emo kid and, crying on stage and, being really upset that your, robot character or whatever died. And having, 25,000 people be like, yeah, here, I'll pay $250 to watch you cry on stage or whatever it is that they do. I just don't, to me, that's not D&D. It's obviously it's entertaining. People are entertained. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's stage theatrics. That's not a game. That's not something I want to play. That I guess is what it comes down to. So I disagree, or maybe I don't disagree with the premise. I just, I reject your reality and substitute my own. I refuse to believe that that's what D&D is, but it probably is what D&D is. And again, is it grognardy? Maybe a little bit, but Dungeon Craft. See, what's all these people have different names to their spells. So
Is D-
the professor, that is the professor DM, said this today. All right, he had a video called "Is D&D still D&D?" Let's talk. Okay.
D&D 2024/2025 still D&D. More to the point is the D&D feature.
I'm going to skip ahead here.
Stranger
So
Things.
he points out that he's a watch collector, and he's talking about how like the original Rolex that James Bond used was really awesome, and he loved it. But there's a modern version, which in theory is the real Rolex, but they've changed a lot of the design elements to make it more modern and slick. Whereas there is a Tudor watch, so the original James Bond watch is the one in the middle. The Tudor watch keeps more of the aesthetic of the original Rolex watch, but the Rolex watch is the one who, you know, is officially the Rolex watch. So he says the following.
The player's hand is the Rolex. Tudor Black Bay looks a lot more authentic. Dungeons & Dragons is the Rolex of tabletop RPGs. It's bigger and shinier than ever. The player's handbook has 700 slick pages, 12 classes, 48 subclasses, 16 backgrounds, 75 feats, 380 spells, and 10 species. And like the Rolex Submariner, D&D resembles its earlier incarnations mechanically, but it's moved in a very different direction. 1978 Advanced Dungeons & Dragons included traditional fantasy races, obviously imported from Tolkien. Every race came with bonuses, but also penalties. Elves and dwarves had infravision and could see in the dark, but they could only go up to 6th or 8th level. Only humans could be paladins. The world was human-centric. The other races were outliers. It wasn't said explicitly in the lore. It was implied by the level limitations and can be seen on the cover art of the original player's handbook. There's not an elf or a dwarf or a tiefling in sight. Modern D&D, at least to me, looks like the Muppet Show. There are all sorts of weird creatures walking around interacting with humans like it's no big deal. This art is a commoner from the latest monster manual. There's an Aasimar hovering above the town, and it's an average day. No one's like, oh wow, it's an angel. It's like, yeah, that's Mike. He's got wings. No big deal. And mechanically, AD&D was a lot tougher. A third-level magic user had...
Again, I mean, this is a question of preference, obviously. But obviously, there's an element there that I agree with, you know, in my own, you know, grognard's, you know, sense. But you know, I agree in that respect with, you know, with Professor DM there, that the game has changed so substantially. I just wonder if the types of stories that people are telling with it have changed substantially, which I think they have, or at least Dungeon World 2 posits they have. Okay, but D&D hasn't changed, right? The mechanics are still, you know, killing creatures with swords, and they're still, you know, gaining levels and experience. And like, it's really weird to me that the whole aesthetic of D&D could change, that the whole belief of D&D could change, the whole approach that people take to D&D adventures and storytelling could change. That enough to the point where Dungeon World 2 says D&D isn't about dungeons anymore. D&D is about fantasy adventures, messy characters with messy lives who are, you know, sort of going on fantasy adventures. So if all of that stuff has changed, but the mechanics haven't changed, that to me feels like we have some sort of fundamental disconnect. Because I believe, as Ben believes, right, that system is setting. System is setting. So, but they've given us no mechanics to explore characters. And I think that means that, you know, we are in a weird place where the game's culture has significantly moved past or outgrown, if you want to call it that way, the mechanics for the game that it's sort of supporting. So I think that's just a thing where I personally feel, you know, like on that way, but you know, imagine if a new edition of D&D dropped and had no hit points. People would lose their minds and say it's not D&D. But yeah, right. Some GMs don't even track HP. So true. Yeah. I don't know if 3.5 ushered the end. I don't know that anything ushered the end. Obviously, the game's doing better than ever. I just think it's really interesting that the structure of how people use D&D to tell games could change so substantially, and yet the mechanics of the game have remained essentially the same. Possibly, Spendin. What exactly do you mean? I guess what I'm saying is like, if like if a game changed, if what you were using something for changed, then you like if what you were trying to do changed, you would probably update the tool that you're using to accomplish it, is all I'm saying. Like if you stopped using nails and now you use screws, you would probably stop using a hammer and you would start using a screwdriver. Right? So I just think it's odd that D&D has, moved from nails to screws, but the game fundamentally is still a hammer. And people wonder why they are so frustrated with D&D. It's because they're trying to hammer in screws because the game gives them a hammer. And it hasn't updated. It hasn't shifted along with the times, which is what people want out of this game system. At least, again, according to the authors of the Dungeon World, Now, Dungeon World feels like, it's a 50-year-old hammer too. So not only is it old, it's just old. And not only is it a hammer, it's also old. So Dungeon World feels like, hey, D&D has changed. Why would we use why would we use dungeons as the basis for a game called Dungeon World when nobody uses dungeons? And it's just crazy to me that a game could be called Dungeon World based off of a game called Dungeons and Dragons, and neither fucking game is about dungeons. It's like, that part is crazy to me. Dungeon World should be called Fantasies and Feelings. I mean, yes, but then it wouldn't sell as well, right? It's so weird. Like, you're like, no, you have to put dungeon in there or it's not going to sell. And it's like, but nobody cares about dungeons. Nobody uses dungeons. It's crazy. The release is coming. Apparently there's going to be a version at Gen Con, supposedly. But they have a weekly blog that they update with upcoming changes to Dungeon World 2. It's at dungeon-world.com. There's a series. I think they've written 5 or 6 articles so far. So I mean, if it does, I'm sure it's probably low-level tacit advice. I don't know. I have it right here. Let me take a look. Dungeon Master's Guide 2024. It's a lovely book. Creating campaigns, creating adventures. No. Creating adventures, step by step. Lay out the premise. What is the adventure premise? What is the conflict? What are the situations? Draw on the players with patrons and hooks. Plan encounters. Character objectives. Keep the adventure moving. Something for everyone. Multiple ways to progress. Social encounters. Social interaction encounters. Exploration encounters. Combat encounters. Monster behaviors. Encounter pacing and tension. Bring it to an end. Adventure rewards. And some examples. And that is it. Rub my eye here. All right. Critter World, that's kind of funny. Well, I'm just irritated at the. I'm just irritated. I don't care that the way that people play. If people don't want to play in dungeons, that's fine. I don't play in dungeons with all of my games. But if I'm going to play a game called Dungeons and Dragons, I would expect that the game called Dungeons and Dragons would be the game that I would want to play to do dungeons. And if I was going to play a game that wasn't about dungeons and it wasn't about dragons, it was about exploring character arcs and finding family, I would think I would play a different game, or I would at least expect the game that I'm playing to care or support or in some way, shape, or form reinforce or, engage with that concept on some kind of level. But that is correct, Random Anon. Draw the rest of the owl, yes. Well, that's true. This Critical Role also has Daggerheart, but I think that's going to... I'm probably wrong because I'm an idiot and I don't know anything, but I feel like Daggerheart is going to bomb. Yeah, I just, my instinct is telling me it is not going to do well. It'll be supported just because they have infinite dollars to throw at it. And kind of probably don't really need it to be a success or care about its success, but yeah. George, yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I'm just saying that, but they are making D&D all of those things. So I think that's a problem. I mean, I kind of agree with you, Beowulf. I feel like the term dungeon has evolved to just mean the combat map. I'm right there with you. I actually think that that's probably very true. I mean, as much as anybody else does, Indiana, so don't knock yourself down. But yeah, it's not gonna, yeah, right. Exactly. Yep. I mean, any name, I mean, they even did some games right on their channel with Candela Obscura. It was, everybody talked about it. They were all bitching about how they didn't include references, and then it kind of just disappeared. And I'm willing to bet that Daggerheart will be as much of an impact and much of a shape, industry changer as Candela Obscura was. So now I thought, or I believe that Critical Role was going to use Daggerheart for their next campaign, but a lot of people were disagreeing with me with that, and they were saying, "Oh no, it's going to just be D&D." And I thought it was going to be Daggerheart. But we'll see. We want to play Dungeons and Dragons without the burden of Dungeons or Dragons. Yeah, that's about accurate. And again, that's why I just think it's really strange that, you're playing a game that has all these, like, the player's handbook's all the way over there, but exactly. I agree. I mean, and the question is, are they going to do that? And apparently, I guess not. I don't know. I can't stay up too much later. Actually, I'm tired tonight, but I don't know what people are using Shadow Dark for, to be honest with you. I haven't really, I mean, part of the whole reason for me is I was like, hey, like, let's bring dungeons back to, to the game. But hasn't D&D pretending that it's the best system for any setting you could want to play it been a problem for a long time? Yeah, I mean, it's the #1 game for a reason. But I don't think that's D&D's fault. I think that's the audience's fault for being so lazy and unwilling to explore the space. I mean, good on D&D for trying to be like, trying to break out of that. Trying to take advantage of that and make money, especially when they're a publicly held company. I know that people had problems with it, for sure. Yeah, that's all I'm saying. I'm just saying it's weird that you're going to have a game called Dungeon World that isn't about dungeons, and you have a game called D&D, which is also not about dungeons. It's just very strange to me. Especially since so many legacy elements. We will see what Dungeon World 2 carries over. We'll see. But there's still so many elements in D&D that are like, does anybody who's playing these games use these abilities or spells anymore, because it seems like they wouldn't. Because I did a whole video about divination spells, and then I talked about, not this game, but I talked about there are like a lot of these spells are still in D&D 5th edition, and everyone was like, I've never seen those spells cast or used ever in my D&D game or in any D&D game. I've never even heard anybody talking about it. And the only time that anybody mentioned diviners, they mentioned the subclass for the wizard is for portent, because portent is the one that you can use in combat. Whereas that's not even, and I almost bristle at the idea of divination being something that you would use during combat. So that was very telling to me, because the game was structurally designed to be about dungeon crawling. It has all of the same detect spells, locate object, locate creature, divination, augury, arcane eye, etc., that 3rd edition had. And yes, they're a little bit different. And yes, they're a little bit, maybe a little less over the top, in that, you know, some of them require concentration and stuff like that. You can't stack them to the degree that you used to be able to do that in 3rd edition. But by and large, the same spells exist. But everyone in chat, of which I will take their collective knowledge as somewhat valid, said, yeah, I've played D&D 5e for 5 years. I've never seen those spells cast. I've never seen anyone use them. No one I've ever seen has cast them has used them. If they've used them, it's been as more of a story beat rather than a like dungeon processing, you know, dungeon procedure element. And so that's very interesting to me, because D&D still has all this legacy, all this baggage, all this complexity, all these mechanics that are fundamentally about delving into dungeons and killing dragons. And it just seems like the game, or at least we've been told that the game has moved past this, or at least people have been, I don't know, led to believe that the game has moved past this, that it has evolved, that there is a better, higher form, which involves sitting around and being melodramatic. One of the best-selling genre of fantasy books now are cozy fantasy. Okay, real talk. If I ever made a game, I could never make a game that I would actually care about. Because if I made a game that I actually cared about, it would never get finished. I would just never be able to finish it. So if I had to make a game, it would have to be a game that I didn't care about. But I thought I had a good idea about it, because I didn't care about it. It means I could finish it. And I am serious when I say I do not know why there isn't. I mean, I'm sure there's been some 5e compatible hacks, but I'm talking about a real game designed specifically to basically be like co-op Stardew Valley, Minecraft, Animal Crossing, right? Where like the primary focus is just on you and your group, building up your little town and making friends with the local NPCs and learning their birthdays and trying to get a girlfriend or a boyfriend, and, you know, building a greenhouse so that you can grow crops during the winter. And, you know, maybe occasionally you go into the mine and you kill bats or whatever for gems. And, you know, one of you is really interested in making a new irrigation system, and another person's really interested in, you know, crafting. I think crafting is a element that has been completely just fumbled by the RPG industry. I know many people who play these MMO games, and they kind of almost play it for the crafting. They play it for the gathering and the crafting. Both sides are really, really important, you know? And they almost kind of don't even really care about adventuring. They just want to, you know, oh, it's a rare blah, blah, blah. I'm going to gather that. And, but Stone Top fundamentally is, you know, this kind of brutal media. I'm talking about like cozy Stardew Valley vibes, you know, Animal Crossing vibes, and have it be, you know, kind of sweet, kind of cute, kind of saccharine. But make it a game that is a legitimate, you know, game. That's the element, not making it just this like super fluffy thing. Like because like Stardew Valley is like, it has mechanics. It has like a process to it. I'm not saying it's like a super complicated game, but yeah. Anyways, I think that is I think that I can't believe that game hasn't been made. There's like a lot of chat I missed. Sorry. George says that Shadow Dark is a fad system. Shots fired. I don't know, man. Maybe. Kelsey's a millionaire now. She's now a multi-millionaire, and it's like the third or fourth most popular game at pretty much every game con. So if it's a fad, at least she got her bag before it burns out. But we'll see. Yeah, the difference is like White Hack, Black Hack, and Lamentations of the Flame Princess never did like $4 million in Kickstarters. So there's something there. I mean, there's something there. Again, there's something about the game that I find interesting in a way that I haven't found some of the other OSR games interesting. Yeah, Draw Steel will have dungeons, but you won't be navigating them SWAT style. You'll be punching goblins through the walls. Yeah, it'll be like Superman in a dungeon. Yeah, maybe that is true. It's just what it's called. Stupid take. EverQuest wasn't about Quest. It was mostly about grinding and community. Absolutely. I have said I played a lot of EverQuest. I played EverQuest with my friends, but I also played EverQuest with, randos. And I basically said EverQuest was the game. EverQuest was just something to do while you were sitting in a chat room. Like you could either go onto MIRC and you could like talk on IRC, or you could play EverQuest. And it was just like, no, you just went on, you joined up with your group channel, or you joined your guild channel, you joined your friend group channel, and you just shot the shit in chat. But instead of just sitting there literally doing nothing, and you were just, sitting in the Dreadlands grinding, North Dirt, or, in Lower Gook, ass sup. And someone's like, yeah, we got space for one. Cool. And then you would just sit there and just chat for hours. And it was, so in that way, it was about grinding and community. I completely agree with you, actually. Daniel says, from what I've seen, there's a culture in 5e of DMs that hate divination type things. They will often house rule them out or make them not reliable. And this came up when we talked about this, about how people hate it because there's this idea of like, you're ruining my story with the divination magics. And that makes sense if that's how you play your D&D games. And I find that to be very sad. Very, very sad. Try using scrying and arcane eye and not having the GM break out in a sweat. Yeah, whereas like my whole point of my rant the other day was that the reason our games worked was because of scrying and because of divination magics, because it allowed the players to be proactive, because the players knew where to go, what to do, and how to do it. And it's like, what about my surprise? What about the tension? What about the dramatic tension? I'm like, this isn't a game about that. Look at the game that you're playing. It's not about that. Yes. I think it is. I think you should give the GM should give the players exactly what they want when they use divination spells or abilities. My God. Yes, they absolutely should. D&D only takes half measures, so it can please everyone. No one plays it the way it used to be played, but people would riot if you remove those things. So D&D ends up being in limbo. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, maybe if Critical Role used them more often, it might highlight their use. But again, I think a lot of the divination magic is useful for dungeon exploration. Many of the original spells are designed to break the challenge of the dungeon entirely, and they still do. Yes, and I've talked about this before. It's called leveling up. It's called getting more powerful. It's called using your abilities to minimize the challenge of the things that used to be challenging. And now we have this weird thing, and I see this in Pathfinder 2 the most, but I see it everywhere. It's like, they're like, no. I want the game to be exactly the same for 20 levels. I want the challenges to be the same. I want everything to be the same. The only difference is at first level, I want to have 15 hit points and do 2 to 3 or 4 damage. And then at 20th level, I want to have 300 hit points and I want things to do 30 to 50 damage. But other than that, I want the game to be exactly the same. And, the monster, instead of being an orc, then it's an ogre, then it's a giant, then it's an angel, giant, godling, but it's just literally the same. And when I get stronger, the monsters get stronger. And when the monsters get stronger, I get stronger. And I want that to be the entire experience. And I never, ever want that to change. I want to be doing the same things. I just want to be doing them against ever increasingly cool monsters, I guess. But that's what I want. I've always been very proud of my Minecraft irrigation system until it got blown up by a creeper, and then I quit the game and I never played Minecraft again. Yeah, I mean 5e was not. They were trying to create a return, I think, to the old style of game. I think they were trying to go back even before 3rd edition. 3rd edition was overly simulationist. 2nd edition D&D wasn't like that. 2nd edition D&D had a lot of, hey, the GM's got to make calls, the GM's got to make rulings. I think 5th edition lies somewhere between 2nd edition and 3rd edition in terms of what they were trying to aim for, just with some of the education about game easiness and game playability that they gained from 3rd and 4th. Oh, I'm like 6 minutes behind. All right, trying to catch up here. I mean, those are very popular, goblins and androids. Venues and NR are very popular. People are very good with this. I'd be the sort of nerd that would make Stardew Valley as a simulationist TTRPG. I mean, I guess it kind of would be a simulationist TTRPG in a way. Iron Valley, I have heard of. But it's a solo hack for Ironsworn, and Ironsworn, I think, has a lot of problems, but that's just me. So, but fundamentally, they are doing it right. As you take actions, the clock advances and days come and go. Can you make the most out of each day? That's definitely a Stardew thing. Create your own life sim, simplified moves, make it a promise, oracles for days. I mean, they are definitely in the right response. I'm almost tempted now to read this. They've even got what looks to be like a Minecraft style crafting system, which I think is actually really smart. Like where you have the craft box and you arrange the things in icon in order to make pickaxes and shovels and stuff. Yeah, so a great example of this, self-confessed cynic. Presentation is so important, and Shadow Dark nails that. Can't underestimate. Roll for Combat, our friends, Glicker and Sifter, are doing a Shadow Dark Bestiary. They're converting their their Battles of Bestiaries into Shadow Dark. And they did a preview of what the covers were going to look like. And I remember I even said like, when Steven showed it to me, I said, well, why aren't they in black and white? And he's like, because that's not what we do. And I guess the Shadow Dark audience was like, why aren't these in black and white? That's the aesthetic. That's the vibe of Shadow Dark. And so Steven was like, okay. And he's going to like completely redo the covers and just make it all in black and white. Right. You could have the mines, which is not the main focus of the game, but you could actually have a pretty cool dungeon crawling component with the mines as well. I agree. Right. So the core premise here is that, D&D didn't really have a bad guy. Like in a dungeon, if the villain is, I guess, going around the village casting detect good to find out if there's good people inside of the huts before he kicks in the door to kill them. I mean, I guess that would kind of ruin it. I think people have the wrong impression of what divination is and means. At the same time, I mean, if you're fighting a powerful spellcaster, then why wouldn't they use those abilities to do that? The only reason I bring this up is I remember when Smith used scrying against me to locate me, teleported an assassin in to kill me. I was dead and around, and then the assassin teleported out. It was kind of cool. Oh, right. I mean, that's exactly right. That's how people respond. Feels weird when I was running PF2 and I was throwing Baylors out as trash mobs. What do you think about the 5e OG designers all bailing, leaving Wizards of the Coast? I talked about this a little bit, but basically I feel like they know that they are never going to fundamentally change 5e again. They'll update it. They'll tweak it. You might get very close to a Ship of Theseus where maybe after many iterations, it is a very different game. But if you're a game designer, you're there to design games. And if 5e isn't being changed or updated and significant, I mean, you were just there for 10 years. And the tweaks that they made for 2024 were minor at best. So at that point, you have two choices, right? Just stay there and collect a paycheck, or maybe try to go and do something else. At the same time, they may have gotten word that, hey, we don't really need game designers anymore because the game isn't really going to be designed anymore. We're going to make tweaks, fixes, little patches, but for the most part, the game is what the game is. And we're just going to keep printing it ad infinitum and collecting D&D Beyond checks. So, yeah, maybe. Yep. So, yeah, I definitely agree. Yes, that is exactly what I think. What are my issues with Ironsworn? Well, I can't say Ironsworn, but I can say Starforged. We played Starforged, but not as a solo game. We played it as sort of like a co-op GM-less game. It was clunky. I just felt like it was kind of clunky and and it was a little too, I don't know. It was, I mean, the premise of a solo RPG is already kind of really weird to me and strange, and I don't know that I even get it. But yeah, I can't say specifically about Ironsworn, but like the idea of being like, well, how challenging is this thing? Well, it's this challenging. Okay, make a check. And then they're like, okay, decide what happens. And it's like, what? I'm not saying that I want the GM to be adversarial, but I kind of want the GM to be adversarial. I mean, I want the GM to provide pushback. You know, there's I can't remember what it's called. It's called prioperception. Proprioception. It's your body's sense of self movement, and proprioception is what it's called, but I think it's pronounced not like that. But in any case, let's see how bad I was. This. Oh, bad. Proprioception. Okay, there we go. So proprioception is this idea of like the sort of self-feedback that you get from movement. And basically one of the reasons that I even know this term is it's from like a term that I came up from weightlifting. And the idea is that the human muscle cannot push as strong against something that isn't heavy enough. You need that sort of feedback in order to push your strongest, right? And so you require that sort of, you know, that pushback, that feedback, in order to be able to recruit maximum strength. It's why, you know, there's no isometric hold that you can do. That's just where you flex your muscle on its own, not against resistance. There's no isometric movement that you can make. You can't just flex your muscle and get as much muscle activation as you could if you were trying to lift something that was actually heavy. I think it's the same thing with RPGs. Like, I want the GM to be that pushback. I want the GM there to challenge, you know, me, the player, and my player character. I want them to, you know, it depends on what the type of game is. It could be through their GM moves, if it's a PBTA game. It could be through their prep, if it's a more traditional, let's say, dungeon-based game. But I want the GM there in a slightly kind of adversarial role. Not like in a I want to win dick way, but in a way where it's like, I'm there to make your life difficult. And I think that some of the elements of Ironsworn and Starforged lacked that because of the solo nature of that. Beowulf says, first look, let's go. Apparently this thing is 250 pages, by the way. But it's a hack for Ironsworn. So do we have to like learn Ironsworn first? I mean, not that I think it's that different, but a big misread by Steven. If it's Shadow Dark, it has to be black and white sketch style or at least line art. Well, he learned. At least he learned before it went to production, you know? D&D is Monopoly now. I mean, yeah, no, I don't think she cares. I mean, for her, I mean, she's just creating. I mean, I think her license is just, you know, you can make whatever you want. I don't think there's a license out there that says it has to meet the Shadow Dark aesthetic, right? Proprioception. There we go. No, I want the GM to be adversarial. Not like in a villain way. You know, what's your turn, Beowulf? You expanded it from Ben's thing, right? Ben had like the bands or something like that, and you made it barns or something. Exactly, George. Adversarial doesn't mean being a dick. Exactly. So Beowulf, Ben had this cool acronym for like the types of NPCs that you could have, and Beowulf added another one, which was like rival. And so like the opposing football team, yeah, maybe, but actually another way to think of it might be more like, right. Okay, there we go. So I don't want the GM to be your nemesis. I want the GM to be your rival. You know, that's sort of a generic way of thinking of it, right? I don't want them to be the nemesis. I want them to be your rival. Or put another way, I mean, think about some of the best mentors in your life, teachers and the like, right? They pushed you. They challenged you. They put you in uncomfortable situations. They didn't always agree with you. They made your life difficult on purpose because they wanted to see how you would learn and grow and, you know, all this other stuff. So that's my view of the GM. You know, I don't want to be this, I don't want spoiled brat children. I want to be the kind of parent that, you know, make sure that the kid doesn't, you know, kill themselves, but isn't so afraid of the kid getting hurt that, like, okay, an example. I think all of my friends who have kids, including my sister, so my sister's my friend, here, I'll use my sister. I won't throw anybody else under the bus but my sister. Sorry, D. Her children are like 19 and 17. And they don't know how to use a knife, like a kitchen knife. And the reason they don't know how to use a kitchen knife is because they never used a kitchen knife. And the reason why they never used a kitchen knife is because my sister wouldn't let them touch knives because they might hurt themselves. And that is true. But now they're adults fundamentally and don't know how to use a knife. And now I actually would think that they would probably hurt themselves and kill them, you know, or chop a finger off because they literally have no idea how to like even hold it. They hold it like it's like a great sword instead of, you know, a nice controlling grip and things like that. It's just some of the way that the moves are set up in Starforged. Again, Ironsworn may be a little bit different. I only know Starforged. Is the way that they're structured is a little bit too strange because of the way that I prefer to roll and interact with RPGs. Spoken like a true outsider. Oh, my teachers hated me because I called them out on their crap. Sorry, Kyle. I will definitely eat all your snacks. Again, I'm not there to win, but I'm also not there to make sure that you win either. You know, like I don't view my role in that situation. In fact, I've said before that I'm kind of a sadistic fuck of a GM. And like people like Smith who've played with me a long time, he could see it coming from like a mile away. Like, oh, really? Oh, you care about that NPC? It's time to put time to put your let's see how much your character really does like that NPC, because it's time to make a choice, time to make a decision. The landing gear, yes, I'm such a sadist. But you know, I don't like to. I like to push. I like to challenge. I like to. I like that force, that pushback. Time to see. So again, I mean, there's a fine line, right, between that and abuse, and then eventually you start to make sure, you know, that you start to become a dick. But yes, I'm there to make sure my players have to work for things and make difficult decisions. Like, I remember we were playing Starforged, and we were creating the world, and I can't remember all the div after us. My internet just flickered there for a second. So I'm gonna check my connections. Okay, everything's good. But anyways, so when you're making an obstacle in Ironforged or Ironsworn or Starforged, you have to like set the fundamental difficulty of it. And we were like, you know, Smith and I were like, well, I mean, this guy's supposed to be like an operative of the, basically, you know, an operative of the what are they called in Firefly? The Senate, right? You know, like the guy from the movie, the operative, the super assassin. And we're like, so we made him like the Alliance. Thank you, Beowulf, the Alliance. Yeah. We made him like, I don't know, like a tier 4 threat. And our buddy George, who I think was more familiar with the game or had played it himself, was kind of like, you guys, I don't think we should do that. Like, that's going to be basically impossible for us to beat. And we were kind of like, yeah, but that just feels what should be right. This guy shouldn't be like a CR appropriate guy. It should be really difficult. And if he comes after us, we should kind of be fucked. And, you know, in a way, we kind of were. I think we ended up somehow airlocking him out. But like the idea of us just like beating him in a straight up confrontation was just not a possibility. So, you know, even in that role, Smith and I were very like being antagonistic to ourselves as players, but just because we were putting on that GM hat mode and being like, well, no, we don't want this to be like set this up so that we could win. We want to set this up so that it's a challenge. And if we can't just beat him, then maybe we have to come up with a different way to, you know, overcome that obstacle rather than just straight up confronting him because he's way too good for us. I never want a player to feel like I killed them because I wanted to, but I never want them to think I would coddle them and magically stop them from dying when they're in a bad situation. Absolutely. And I will tell you something here. Maybe it's just my players, but I have found in my life that my players get a lot more invested, or let's say my players get a lot more invested and my players really celebrate a win a lot more when they really feel like I'm trying, you know, like to kill them, you know, like that I take it a little bit personally, because, and you know, some of that, they understand some of that is performative, but you know, if the GM is like, yeah, let's go players. Yeah. Kill all the monsters. You're like, wait, aren't you playing the monsters? Like, but if like the GM really feels like they are playing the monster to the hilt and they are really trying to come after you and you win, but you know that they're being fair, but they are trying, they're using the rules, they're staying within the boundary. It feels like an actually deserved win, you know? And I found that there have been times it's like where, you know, it's like the players are like, oh, what about your badass NPC now, Derek? Oh, he's dead, you know? And you know, like they're legitimately happy because they know that they beat me. And I think that is very satisfying. I think it's satisfying to beat the GM. And again, it could be my old school, you know, upbringing, but I like beating the GM. You know, I like seeing the GM get a little flustered. I like the GM being like a little bit like, oh, you guys, I thought I was smart, but you're smarter. And not having it be performative. You know, maybe you can tweak it up. Maybe you can sprinkle some dust, some fairy dust on it to make it, you know, really shine. But for the most part, it's you know, it's deserved. I liked for my players to feel like they have beaten me, you know. Right. Exactly. And I think that's a more satisfying outcome for the players, for sure, especially if you're using any sort of combative RPG at all. Yeah, you have this really weird view of monster tactics, which I don't necessarily fundamentally agree with. I guess here's the thing. If you look at a monster and you look at its intelligence and you look at your players and you ask yourself, if I had a player that was playing a character that was int 8 or whatever, int 10, would that player be like, no, I don't flank? Why not? My character's not smart enough to flank. If that's how your players would play, then I guess more power to you. But I have never met a player in my entire life that has ever done that, except to be a dick on purpose and make the rogue because he was mad at the rogue. So, you know, more power to you if that's your group, but that's not any other group on the planet. I'm fairly confident in saying that. I mean, maybe there's some really try-hard groups out there that are like, we're just like Critical Role, man. I'm going to make an intelligence check, you know. Well, GM Scott, we've already had this discussion, and I specifically brought up wolves because wolves understand flanking, outmaneuvering, targeting the weak people, separating the strong from the weak, separate, divide. I mean, yeah, they do all this. So, I mean, to be honest with you all, a battle versus a lot of battles versus wolves don't even make any sort of sense because the wolves would just, you know, run away immediately. I don't know why, Beowulf, but this is like me thinking you're like, I'm becoming a wolf. I am the wolf. But yeah, you know, hey, here's a strongly armed group of men and you know, humans and women with armor and torches and weapons, and they're walking around with, you know, yeah, we're gonna attack them. No, they're not. They're just not. Yeah, they're just not even gonna fight them. They're just gonna leave. Or at very least, they're gonna, like, you know, try to attack somebody in the back and like try to drag them away into the cave or into the woods or whatever. Do you really not make suboptimal choices in combat in the name of role playing? Almost never. Mindless zombies, maybe. Maybe some constructs. But fundamentally that, other than that, yeah. Like, in my mind, there's like 3 categories of monsters. There's like mindless, animal intelligence, everything else. That's basically about it. So, you know. As we often do. So for those of you who aren't aware, Storm and Fallacy basically says that if you're optimized or playing optimal, then you can't be role-playing. Or rather, that role-playing prevents optimization and that optimization prevents role-playing. But the truth is they're independent of one another. I don't think I've seen any GM play flyers to their tactical optimum. Players tend to suicide them in a group of melee marshals for no reason. And the reason why that's funny is if you've watched our show for any length of time, you've probably heard Bob say at least several times, and he says it in Discord, and he says it on shows all the time about blah, 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 or don't throw a fucking monster that flies at a level like 2 party, because there was some like green, it's the River Drake, right? Is that what it is in PF2? PF2 River Drake. I think they maybe upped the CR. Maybe it's still like level 3 or something like that. It's still level 3. Okay. This monster, the River Drake, Smith basically like TPK'd our party with this thing because it has a fly speed of 50 feet. And, it just never landed, like, ever. What about Draconic Frenzy? Nah, I'm good on that. I'll just caustic mucus you guys, like, until you're all dead. But it can't use it again for 1d6 rounds. Yeah, that's cool. I'll just fly high while I wait for that to recharge. And I remember Bob just being like so frustrated at like losing so badly. And I was like, yeah, Bob, I mean, that's what he is. He goes, yeah, fly in circles, mucus spam. And that's what Smith did. And it just wiped our party, what my PC would do versus what I would do is like a 95% overlap. And generally, that's probably, maybe it's like 90/10 for like what my NPC or monster would do is what I would do 90% of the time. Right. Unfortunately, we were playing Pathfinder 2, which means that nobody can use a ranged weapon unless you are specifically a ranged weapon specialist. And as we did not have a ranged weapon specialist, unfortunately, it didn't work. And even if we did have someone who could shoot weapons, it's only one person of 4 or 5 versus the monster. So that's not enough to be combatively effective. So anyways, I strive to lower it as far as possible without being too ridiculous. So 80. All right, everybody. All right. 80-20. I can respect 80-20. 80-20 is fine. I mean, like I said, I admit mine's a little higher. Mine's probably more like 90-10. But I think 80-20 is also fine. I think that's fine. Exactly, Strat. One range weapon specialist at level 2 versus one level 3 creature. That's like an extreme +2 encounter. Oh, and Strat, it gets worse because there was like a goblin mounted on the level 3 creature who had like a bow or something like that, or short bow. So, and I mean, it was only like basically like a level 1 goblin, but that was enough to just completely wreck our party. So Gary the archer will run. You take out the dragon. Now, alternatively, when we were playing 5th edition, we were playing our 5th edition Dungeon Time Extreme. The group had a small little base built outside of the Caves of Chaos. They had hired some dwarves and human guardsmen to kind of build a small little palisades. And they had like 10 archers or like 10 bowmen, 10 men at arms or whatever they hired to keep their base safe. And then they had like 5 or 6 people that kind of like, worked around the camp. And then there was the PCs. And I randomly rolled and I got like a level 9 or level 8 red dragon. And they knew that the red dragon was on the random encounter table because I had like alluded to it and they knew it was a possibility. And so sure enough, I described that the red dragon, perhaps drawn by their success and the smell of gold in the air, they see it approaching, coming in on the horizon. And of course it's a red dragon, it's level 9. Both it and I were thinking, whatever, I'll come in here, I'll burn this whole town, this little keep down. And props to 5e, the PCs, most of whom were not ranged weapon specialists. They did have one ranger who was pretty good with a bow, had a good dex. But this contingent of the PCs who made good with whatever bows they could manage, and their 10 random men-at-arms with their random short bows or whatever, proceeded to launch volley after volley of this at this red dragon as it closed in from, 600, 800 feet away. And by the time it got to like within 200 feet, it had lost 50% of its hit points. And I decided it was like, it just nopes the fuck out. It's like, oh, nope, I'm not fucking with that. I'm out of here. And nobody thought that was lame. Everybody, including me, thought that was awesome because it was like, yeah, like this is how towns and stuff would fight off a dragon. You would just pepper it with hundreds of arrows until it died. And, especially if you could see it coming from a mile off, they're like, it's a good thing we built that little watchtower in our little fort so that somebody saw the dragon before it got close. And the dragon was being kind of cocky because I was being kind of cocky, and I was planning on just flying overhead and torching them all with my breath weapon, setting the thing on fire, that kind of thing. I don't know about the range, but Magic Missile, at least in 3rd edition, was only 100 feet plus 10 feet per level. So your Magic Missile range was pretty short, all things considered. It's mind-boggling to me that there are people who wouldn't think that's awesome. There are so many people who wouldn't think that's awesome. There are so many people who wouldn't think that that's awesome. So many. No, 5e, D&D, Magic Missile. No way it's 500 feet. 120 feet. Yeah, so basically it's still at the 100 feet plus 10. So there you go. So Magic Missile wouldn't really work until you get to like the absolute, critical range where the dragon's going to swoop in and do its breath weapon. 5e red dragon. Yeah, I don't think it was an adult red dragon. I think it was a young red dragon. Is that right? Yeah, the adult red dragon CR challenge rating 17. It was not that. I think it was young. Here we go. It's on roll 20. Young red dragon is challenge rating 10. It was a young red dragon. That was it. So I will say 120 feet feels like 500 feet in Abomination Vaults. It basically is. I mean, 120 feet is like halfway across the entire dungeon map. You can't even see 500 feet away. That's like 140 meters. That's almost past the horizon. Yeah, well, not quite, especially if something's flying. You can see it from a long, long fire away. But anyways, also, D&D 5e, you guys can help me out here because I don't know how to play the game. If I'm correct, right, the longbow has a range and a max range, and if it's beyond the first range, you just get disadvantage, right? So a longbow can shoot up to 600 feet away, and it has disadvantage. That's it. In 3rd edition, you got like -2 penalty to hit for every range increment. So like something at the max range increment of your bow in D&D 3e was like -20 to hit. So it was like basically pointless. And while I'm not saying that disadvantage is good, the fact is 10 archers, it's not exactly true, but 10 archers shooting with disadvantage is kind of like 5 archers shooting without disadvantage. So when you think about that, you're like, okay, so 5 archers shoot out and it's like boom, boom, boom. He takes 9, and plus you're going to get a couple 20s in there, right? You're going to get a couple 20s in there. I mean, maybe not with the disadvantage, but it does. What they do land eventually. And again, the creature, he took 15, 20 damage, and then he took 15, 20 damage, and he only had like 150 or something hit points. So by the time he was even close enough to potentially make a final run to be able to be within range to actually, breathe on the people, his breath weapon is a 30-foot cone. So he would basically have to be right over top of them and shoot the cone straight down. And his fly speed's only 80 feet. So even if he's dashing, he's only closing 160 feet around. So again, they were able to shoot him like for 3 or 4 rounds, and they did enough damage to him that I just said, he's out. So anyways, so it's one of those situations where, yes, it's probably not very simulationist that anybody could hit a flying red dragon, even at that range, even at the large size, but flying through the air at max speed with your long bow from hundreds of from 2 football pitches away, no one's going to be able to hit that. But it's D&D. Shit happens. I mean, it's not a simulation, this game. Let's not pretend that it is. I mean, they're trying. Any case. All right, it's 4 a.m. It's time to go to bed. This was fun, everybody. Hopefully this does it for us for Twitch. Hopefully we become an affiliate. Again, these late night streams are really just me hanging out, shooting the shit, getting to talk with all of you. What's up, Thorthos? We're about to dip out. Should have been a black dragon attacking night. Now you're thinking. Unfortunately, that red dragon is what was on the random encounter table, and that's the way it was going to have to be. Oh, big time. He definitely did. That's actually sick. For my first stream, and now you got up for my second stream. That's sick. But yeah, I will definitely let you know when I become an affiliate. Hopefully, like I said, hopefully it's this month, April. So it'll be affiliate status in May. But more stuff coming. And big thanks to everybody for hanging out with me tonight. That was really fun. I really enjoyed it. I don't know. I think GM Scott might have tipped, and that might have been it. Let me see. GM Scott and Orcus Sun and a self-confessed cynic. Thank you guys for the tips and super chats. Well, that's the thing. The archers don't need 20s though, George. The archers had like +4 or something to hit, maybe +5 to hit something. And so the dragon's AC of 18, they need to roll a 13 or higher. So their chances of, well, not the dragon I was looking at. You might be looking at the level 17 dragon, George, in which case, yeah. So it was not the level 17 dragon. It was a young dragon. So, in case, we will not be on tonight, but we will be back Thursday and Friday. Finally get to make Pathfinder 2 characters. Everyone's going to be present. They said so on the schedule. And so I'm excited. I don't know what I'm going to make. Smith has made a couple of updates. We've changed a couple of things. He thought it was a little bit too close to our Fabulous Ultima game, so he changed some things. But I'll tell you this. I'm not going to be a fighter, and I'm not going to be a cleric. Probably won't be a spellcaster. I am tempted to be something from Eldamon, whether it's an elemental avatar or whether it's an Eldamon trainer. I like the idea of the elemental avatar, but I have to read more about it. No, I'm talking about Smith's new campaign. I was going to run a Fabula Ultima campaign, but then I lost my job. Well, then my dad died. We made characters, and then my dad died. I lost my job, and I've been trying to focus more on this channel, and I might be running some additional games for the channel to try to, encourage people to upgrade their Patreon memberships just to try to make some extra couple $100 a month or something. And so I'm going to be running a lot of games, and I said, guys, I'm going to be kind of really tapped out and really focused on the channel. I don't know that I want to be running another game. And so Smith said, good guy Smith said, well, I've always got ideas, and there was some stuff I wanted to do with NR Season 3 that obviously we're not using. So I can run a game. And I said, yeah. And we talked about games we wanted to play, and I said, look, at the end of the day, Smith's running the game. I think it should be his call. And he's like, yeah, I kind of want to. I actually been thinking about Pathfinder 2, and he's got a lot of changes, by the way. It's like Pathfinder 2 BTA. Like, one of the things is you can try to do anything. You don't need a feat to do it. But it's not like you're going to get penalized with a action economy issue. It's more of a consequence issue. And there's a lot of changes, of course. But anyways, point is, there's a lot of ancestries available to us. I don't know that 3 psychic squirrels in a suit of power armor is one of the approved things. But I will say this. There's an old joke that we had, it's like probably close to 20 years old at this point, about one of Tim's characters named Horace, who through a temporal paradox got like turned into a magical item, which was an intelligent staff of healing. And then in a later campaign, we found a staff of healing, and the joke was that it was actually Tim's character from a previous campaign. And because the joke was that his character might as well have been an intelligent staff of healing, because that's all his character did, really. And so now that you can actually make intelligent magic items as your ancestry, Tim is actually considering doing that because of the intelligent weapon ancestry from Battlesuit Bestiary, from Roll for Combat. What did Elia said? Elia said, a Leshy Beast Gunner? No, we won't be doing that. No, not a gourd leshy. No, I don't. I don't know. I don't know what I'd be. I gotta think if I want to be this elemental avatar first, and if I am an elemental avatar, I need to look into it more. Which element I want to be, because those things are cool. The problem is that we're also not using the grid. We're using this kind of like theater of the mind zone system, and a lot of the stuff of the Eldamon elements, the light, flame, are very grid specific. So I don't know if it's going to be a good exact fit, but we'll see. I mean, we'll see how it works out, Brandon. I'm sure Smith has some ideas. It's kind of a live play test. Fuck it, we'll do it live type thing. But let's see here. These are the ancestries that are available in addition to the ones from things. We've got gremlins, nymphs, Seedae, arboreals, automatons, flesh warps, doppelgangers, slimes, Cythenos, were creatures, Lamias, swarm bloods, Oni, devils, angels, demons, psychopomps, dragons, dungeons, intelligent weapons, mimic, evil eyes, sphinxes, gargoyle, giant, golemborn. I could maybe be a gargoyle. Call myself Goliath. We live again. Dun, dun, dun. Just make like a character, like straight out of Gargoyles. That TV show was awesome. But will it be more live than DTX? I don't know what you mean by more live. Oh, interesting. Yeah, okay. Chunky grid. I get it. Would that count as a deep cut? Maybe. Oh, they're making a remake of Gargoyles. That'll either be amazing or terrible. If it's anything like X-Men 94, good job. Although I've only seen like a couple episodes of X-Men 94. I wanted to watch more of it, but yeah. So Smith posted that, and then Tim posted, "Lol, you could be an intelligent weapon. Who wants to wield Horus 3.0?" Because that was the name of his character, Horus. So this is the third incarnation of Horus. The original Horus was like actual character. Second version was an intelligent item, and now it's intelligent item character. Yes, that's amazing. So I don't know. I don't know what else I would want to be. Somebody should be an intelligent dungeon. Yeah, that one's a little too zany even for me. I don't know. We'll figure it out. There should be one character wielding multiple intelligent items, and intelligent items is going to be all of us. Yes, that's a possibility. Again, if you're aware of what Smith did to 5e, you should be aware that his PF. And if you've ever read The Dark of Winter, then Smith is not afraid to make some changes in the game. He also wants to somehow incorporate mythic tier in there, or the mythic progression. So we'll see. One dude with 4 samurai swords, and they're all PCs. I love it. You could be a dungeon and dragon. That's true. I think we're allowed to play like versatile, like half dungeon, half dragon. Even for me, doesn't even like poppets and leshies. Oh my God, my next character should be a poppet. I hate you all. Poppets and leshies are still the worst. Poppets are worse than leshies, but nothing is bad as the stupid pug dog things. Yeah, it's kind of a Gamma World-esque feeling for sure. Kind of. Shunies. Shunies is the worst. Which is worse, dungeons or Shunies? Brandon, we have not done a deep dive on Rifts because I can't do a deep dive on Rifts because I don't know Rifts well enough to be able to deep dive it. Where's my Rift book? I don't even know where my Rift book is. It's somewhere. But I can really only do a deep dive on a game that I feel like I actually know and have like a deep insight in. All I know is Glitter Boys for the win. You could be a half dungeon, half fae, and basically be a Peter Pan type character. What is a shoonie? Just look it up. It's a pug-based ancestry. Joke's on you. I'm currently playing an awakened animal white wolf puppy, tiny-sized cat, cleric champion. Oh. It's terrible. Terrible. It's terrible. It's terrible. Let's see here. Yeah, so basically the world, the description that Smith gave us in the last update, which was a week ago, said the world is post-apocalyptic, thousands of years after a brutal war to end all war. This war had every kind of sci-fi fuck-up world-ending situation at the same time. Clusterfuck or unreliable narrator, ? We'll figure it out together. This could mean nukes, biochem, nanobots, AI gone wild, diseases, destruction, plagues, zombies, everything. This actually killed most of humanity off, which many of the ones that didn't die became stock for endless mutations and nanobot rewrite spinoffs. There are other races, more or less, not just humans, but animal and synthetic stock, meaning that crow people may have literally come from crows. Monsters also came from this. Furthermore, the rules of genetics, physics, gravity, and everything are all suspect beyond the physical world, as the physical laws of the universe have been stretched. Life is more like a tumor now than an organized society, growing randomly and everywhere and making new horrific things, but occasionally beautiful ones. So there you go. That's the kind of the lore of the world. So it's like, you know, after vast mutations and nanobot mutations, that's why we have all this, you know, stuff that we can be. That's the worst. This is the worst take that you've ever had, ever. I like the idea of playing intelligent animals, but not awakened. Like Lassies or Skippy or Flipper. Animals that can't speak, but can basically understand language. What is wrong with you? That's the worst thing I've ever heard. Why would you? I mean, it's one thing to not want to play an awakened animal. It's one thing to not want to play an animal, period. But if you're going to play an animal, how would you not play an awakened animal? You'd want to play an intelligent animal, but one that's not awakened. Tell me how you would even go about role playing that. That is the craziest thing that you've ever said, Beowulf. I'm sorry. That is the craziest thing you've ever said. My pup character is okay. I gotta go. I gotta go.
Dungeons and Dragons. Satan's
That's
game.
way too much for me. All right. I gotta go. It's very simple. You just have a fully automatic wheeled automated water tank that got pushed around through the dungeon, and your dolphin would be in it. And that way you could play your dolphin in the dungeon. It'd be like that thing from Johnny Mnemonic, but with wheels. And it would, and have little like robot arms so that it could manipulate things still. An aquarium on a Walmart scooter is pretty good too. All right. I got to go. I got to get some sleep and also not be talking about this ever. How much would it cost for you to make that character, Derek? Well, I don't know if that's an available ancestry. I mean, I guess Awakened Animals is one, but I don't know about the robotic aquarium tank. I don't know how much of an option that is. Yeah, I will dream of your terrible ancestries. All right, everybody, I'm out. I will see you guys on Thursday. Thanks a lot. And again, remember, if you want to support the channel, patreon.com/nightslastcall, or just subscribe. We go live Tuesdays and Thursdays, and apparently random times now throughout the week, including sometimes at 4 or 5 in the morning, so that we can hang out with all you beautiful people. I hope you guys have a great week. I will see you guys later. And until then, be good to each other. Play RPGs. We'll see you next time on Knights of Last Call. Peace.